Chapter 2022. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds exploded in the sky, shaking the heavens. The triple god-slaying blade was defeated by the two heavenly dragons on the spot. It exploded into pieces and scattered in the sky. The power of the two heavenly dragons did not decrease and hit the elder hard. The elder was covered in blood and flew back in a sorry state. At the same time, the bloody hurricane released by the tribal chief was also shattered by the giant sword. He was hit by the giant sword before he could dodge. Boom. Following a muffled explosion, his tall and sturdy body was cut in half on the spot. Dark purple demon blood, mixed with colorful internal organs, sprayed out immediately. The tribal chief did not expect that he would be defeated by Ji Tianxing in one move, and his body would be destroyed. The body of a demon powerhouse had always been abnormally strong, enough to look down on the world. However, in front of Ji Tianxing, the tribal chief was like a piece of paper. However, his will was very tenacious and he refused to give up. The two halves of the body emitted a blood-red light and flew together, trying to piece back together to form a complete body. However, how could Ji Tianxing let him do as he wished? Piercing sword. The heaven's barrier sword thrust forward, emitting a dazzling cold light that flashed in the night sky. In the next moment, the cold light pierced through the tribal chief's head and exploded in his head. Boom. With a muffled explosion, a blazing white mushroom cloud bloomed, illuminating the night sky for hundreds of miles. This time, not only was the tribal chief's body blown into powder, even his soul could not escape in time, and was instantly killed by the sword light. The tribal chief of the Moonless tribe was killed by Ji Tianxing in two moves just like that. The elder, who was not far away, witnessed this scene with his own eyes. He was shocked and terrified. He was about to use his unique skill to attack Ji Tianxing and save the tribal chief at the same time. Seeing that the tribal chief was killed in an instant, he could not help but be stunned. After coming back to his senses, he turned around and fled without hesitation. He fled to the north without a care for anything else. Ji Tianxing turned into a stream of light and chased after him, using his divine sense to lock onto the elder's divine soul aura. The elder saw that he was relentless in his pursuit, and looked like he wouldn't give up until he was dead. He was shocked and angry. In a moment of desperation, the elder exerted all his strength to use the teleportation secret technique, and traveled 20 miles in an instant. Ji Tianxing followed closely behind and teleported 20 miles, catching up with him immediately. 7-star sword. With a wave of the burial of heaven's sword, 49 giant swords of golden light instantly engulfed the elder's figure. Pung pung pung. The elder, who had nowhere to hide, was immediately struck by the sword light that filled the sky and was blasted into pieces. After his physical body was destroyed, his divine soul was also severely injured. He fled to the north in a panic. However, Ji Tianxing caught up with him and waved his palm to release a dazzling 5-colored thunderbolt. Following a few thunderous booms, the elder's divine soul was destroyed on the spot by the thunderbolts and vanished into thin air. After the 5-colored thunderbolts dissipated, the night sky gradually regained its calm. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky and frowned as he looked to the north. He secretly released his divine sense and began to investigate and search. Although he had successfully intercepted the fleeing chief and elder, and killed them with thunderous means, he was not happy. However, he wasn't happy at all. His heart was filled with worry. After all, the priest of the Moonless tribe had disappeared. From the chief's tone, the priest had long fled the Moonless tribe, and was rushing to Black Sun City. In the demon territory, the most sacred and dignified place was of course the sacred mountain. The ancestor demon god, and the 4 demon saints were all gathered there. That was the leader of North Underworld Mountain. Below the sacred mountain, there were more than 20 cities, all of which had demon monarch powerhouses and millions of demons gathered there. Below the cities were the various demon tribes. The Moonless tribe was not far from Black Sun City, and was also under the jurisdiction of Black Sun City. Before entering North Underworld Mountain, Ji Tianxing had studied the map of North Underworld Mountain. The first target they were searching for was the Black Sun Abyss. In recent years, there had been many anomalies there, and there might be divine pearls hidden there. Unfortunately, the Black Sun Abyss was north of Black Sun City, about 10,000 miles away. Once the priest escaped to Black Sun City and reported, Black Sun City would definitely send a large number of experts and powerhouses to madly search for and kill Ji Tianxing and the other two. Ji Tianxing was not afraid of being surrounded by the demons, but in that case he would no longer be able to hide his whereabouts. After 100 breaths, he used his divine sense to search 1,000 miles, but did not find any trace or aura of the priest. He had reason to believe that the priest had long fled far away. Most likely, after escaping the Moonless tribe, the priest had used some kind of secret technique or magic treasure. After all, when he caught up with the chief and elder, the priest was already gone. Sigh. Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and turned to fly back to the Moonless tribe. After a while, he returned to the Moonless tribe. Overlooking the valley from the night sky, he saw the entire tribe. At this time, the Moonless tribe had long become a sea of fire and ruins, completely destroyed. The destructive dragon breath burned the valley into scorched earth, and the surrounding mountains also melted into magma, continuously flowing into the valley. The aftermath of the great battle destroyed all the houses and buildings into dregs and powder. 90% of the 100,000 demon civilians were also massacred. The ground was littered with broken bones, dark purple bloodstains, and broken pieces of weapons. The tens of thousands of surviving demon civilians were completely scared out of their wits. No matter how devout their faith was, or how crazy their fighting spirit was, it all disappeared at this time. In front of the hellish scene and massacre, nothing was important except for survival. The tens of thousands of demon civilians collapsed, roaring and screaming in fear and despair, desperately fleeing in all directions. However, Luo Li Yunyao and the two divine dragons each guarded a direction, surrounding the entire valley. The demons who fled in all directions could not escape alive. After a quarter of an hour, the battle finally ended. All the demons had been killed. The world quieted down, leaving only the sound of rolling magma and the rising flames. Ji Tianxing returned to the top of the ruins, and Luo Li Yunyao and the two divine dragons all surrounded him. Yunyao looked at him with concern and asked, "Tianxing, have you dealt with the three guys who escaped?" Although Luo Li did not speak, she also looked at him with a serious gaze. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a serious expression, "I only caught up with the chief and the elders and killed them. However, the priest is nowhere to be seen." According to the chief, the priest fled to Black Sun City in the north to inform them. Yunyao suddenly frowned, showing a touch of worry. This is bad. That tribe's priest is a tribulation stage powerhouse. He can definitely escape to Black Sun City. Our whereabouts will be exposed, and we will soon be hunted down by a large number of demon powerhouses. Chapter 2023. Luo Li's words silenced Ji Tianxing and Yunyao. Black Sun City was near the Black Sun Abyss, but they had to go there to search for the God Orb. Everyone knew that. Their whereabouts had definitely been exposed this time. With the demon race's style, they would never let them go. They would chase them to the end and never give up. The atmosphere was a little dull and a little awkward. The three of them were silent. After a long time, Ji Tianxing said, "We can't stay here for long. We should go." Then he rode the black dragon and flew north. Yunyao saw Luo Li's strange expression and seemed to blame herself, so she comforted her. "Luo Li, don't think too much. We won't blame you. Before we came to the North Underworld Mountain, we had already considered this problem and made preparations." Luo Li nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "It's useless to say anything now. Yao Yao, you don't have to comfort me. I know what to do. This happened because of me, so I will take responsibility. No matter what dangers we encounter in the future, I will try to resolve them. I will follow the Divine Master's orders to help you search for the God Orb and protect you to leave the North Underworld Mountain safely." Then, she stopped talking and rode the glass fire dragon to the north. 40,000 miles away from the Moonless tribe, there was a grayish-brown wasteland. The flat and vast wasteland was thousands of miles wide, and the ground was covered with gravel and weeds. It was covered by black clouds and thick fog all year round. The light was dim and filled with the cold aura of death. Even the ferocious demon beasts didn't dare to approach this area, let alone enter the wasteland. In the depths of the wasteland, There was an ancient city that covered an area of 100 miles. The ancient city made of black stone was circular, like a black sun, buckled on the wasteland. The city walls were 30 meters high, made of huge black stone, and inlaid with large iron chains that were as thick as the mouth of a bowl, tightly connected. Inside the city were rows upon rows of houses, like fortresses, like inverted black bowls. The architectural style of the ancient city retained the most ancient characteristics of the demon race, mysterious and gloomy. The devils walking on the streets were all dressed in loose black robes. Their bodies were filled with black chi, as if they were ghosts walking in the dark night. This was despite the fact that there were nearly 1 million demons living in the city. However, there were very few people walking in the streets and alleys. The entire ancient city was not bustling with activity. It was exceptionally quiet and strange. At this moment, it was late at night. A dark red blood moon hung diagonally in the night sky, obscured by dark clouds and thick fog, appearing and disappearing from time to time. In the depths of the ancient city, in the most solemn palace. In the spacious meeting hall, the gems on the walls shone with a dark red light. Sitting on the throne at the head of the table was a white-haired middle-aged man in a purple robe. This person's skin was dark purple, his eyes were scarlet red like flames, and his facial features were sharp as if they were carved by a blade. His entire body emitted dense killing intent and domineering aura. He was the city lord of Black Sun City, Shuiyu. At the same time, he was one of the 36 demon monarchs of the demon race, ranked 9th, Demon Monarch Blood Ghost. Demon Monarch Blood Ghost had ruled Black Sun City for hundreds of years. He controlled a city, over 50 tribes, and nearly 10 million demons. He was one of the top nobles of the demon race, and had the qualifications to meet the 4 demon saints. On the left side of the meeting hall sat a purple-robed elder of the demon race. This person's face was old, and his body was somewhat stooped. He held a 5-foot-long ghost headstaff in his hand. Under the disheveled white hair was a face that was as withered as an old tree. He looked like he had 1 foot in the grave, and was getting old. However, his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's, and occasionally flashed with a malicious light that made people shudder. From this, it could be seen that this purple-robed elder was not an ordinary person. Even Demon Monarch Blood Ghost maintained a respectful attitude towards him, not daring to slight him. This purple-robed elder was also one of the 36 demon monarchs, ranked 4th, Demon Monarch Ghost Shadow. In the hall paved with black stone, a gray-robed elder stood respectfully. This person's appearance was somewhat wretched. His gray robe was stained with blood, and his white hair was disheveled. Even so, he still held a demon Dao Codex and a snake-headed walking stick in his hand. If Ji Tianxing was here, he would definitely recognize this person as the priest of the Moonless tribe. The priest lowered his head and bowed to Demon Monarch Blood Ghost. He said in a respectful tone, "This subordinate is the high priest of the Moonless tribe. Greetings to the honorable city lord." Demon Monarch Blood Ghost raised his eyebrows and looked at him. He asked in a low voice, "Priest Moonless, you came here injured in the middle of the night, saying that you have an urgent military report. What the hell happened? Did the Moonless tribe encounter some difficulties?" Priest Moonless shook his head, his face filled with grief and indignation. He said in an indignant tone, "City Lord, what our tribe encountered is not a difficulty, but a disaster." Demon Monarch Blood Ghost was startled and frowned. Even Demon Monarch Ghost Shadow, who was sitting on the left, narrowed his eyes and looked at Priest Moonless with a sharp gaze. An invisible pressure enveloped Priest Moonless. He was in awe and hurriedly explained, "Reporting to City Lord, this is what happened. Today, our tribe was holding a sacrificial ceremony, and hundreds of thousands of people were praying under the altar. Who knew that a strong human enemy would suddenly invade, break into the altar, and blaspheme the glory of our ancestors?" Priest Moonless explained everything that had happened in detail. Of course, he also cleverly explained that he, the chief, and the elders had run away at the last minute. He was not afraid of death, nor was he running away at the last minute. He shouldered a heavy responsibility and came to Black Sun City to report. After hearing the story, Demon Monarch Blood Ghost's face darkened. His brows furrowed and his eyes flashed with killing intent. "Priest Moonless, are you sure those 3 invaders were humans?" A young man and 2 young women? They really massacred the Moonless tribe? Priest Moonless hurriedly nodded and said in an indignant tone. Yes, this subordinate saw it clearly. Those 3 were very strong, and they had 2 divine dragons with them. When this subordinate left the tribe, tens of thousands of people had been killed by them. By now, the entire tribe has probably been destroyed, and all the people have been massacred. Those 3 human bastards did not even spare the old, weak, women, and children of our tribe. They are simply heartless and cruel to the extreme. Ghost Blood Demon Monarch clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. His killing intent grew even thicker. Priest Moonless, do you still remember what those 3 people looked like? Of course I do. Priest Moonless was already prepared. He hurriedly waved his hand, and a white light floated in the air. The white light formed a light screen, and several images appeared on it. They were the portraits of Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, Luo Li, and the 2 divine dragons. The images were very clear and very lifelike. Demon Monarch Blood Ghost looked over and fixed his gaze on Ji Tianxing's portrait, and his eyes widened. Chapter 2024. Ghost Shadow Devil Monarch and Elder Moonless were stunned by Devil Monarch Blood's words. Both of them frowned as they stared at Ji Tianxing's portrait. Elder Moonless subconsciously asked, City Lord, could it be that you've seen this demon before? Devil King Blood did not answer. Instead, he stared at Ji Tianxing's portrait and asked Ghost Shadow Demon King. Ghost Shadow, do you recognize him? Ghost Shadow Demon King was also suspicious. He was not sure at first, but after being reminded, he said in a cold voice, Old Nine, you mean he is Ji Tianxing? Devil King Blood nodded slightly and said in a low voice, That's right. He is the #1 enemy of my tribe, the human genius that our ancestor has requested to kill many times, Ji Tianxing. In these few years, I have seen this person's portrait many times, and I have a deep impression of him. Although this monarch has never seen him before, this monarch definitely won't be mistaken about his portrait. After saying that, a light flashed in his palm, and a scroll appeared. He shook his hand, and the scroll opened, revealing a portrait. The person in the portrait was a white-robed, black-haired youth. It was Ji Tianxing without a doubt. Ghost Shadow Demon King and Elder Moonless looked at the scroll in Devil King Blood's hand, and then looked at Ji Tianxing's portrait on the screen. They no longer had any doubts. It really is him. Elder Moonless was emotional. He said with grief and indignation, No wonder this person is so strong, and his methods are so cruel. Master Castellan, please avenge our Moonless tribe. Devil King Blood glanced at him and said expressionlessly, Ji Tianxing is the #1 enemy of my tribe. Our ancestor has ordered him to be killed. Even if you did not beg, I would not have let him go. Elder Moonless was relieved. He thanked Devil King Blood gratefully and said no more. The ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch frowned and pondered for a moment. With a serious expression, he said, Ji Tianxing dared to intrude into our territory, and even massacred the Moonless tribe. We must cut him into pieces to vent our anger. However, Old Nine, you should have heard that Ancestor Shuepao once went to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to kill Ji Tianxing. The old ancestor returned in defeat, his physical body destroyed, leaving only his divine soul to recuperate in the sacred mountain. Demon Lord Blood Demon Lord nodded slightly and said in a low voice, How could I not know? Not only Patriarch Shuepao, but the newly promoted Demon Saint Shura was also killed by Ji Tianxing not long ago. Fortunately, Lord Azura had mastered a secret technique. After his body was destroyed, he could still use the heavenly demon Jade Seed technique to be reborn. 2 great devil saints have fallen in the hands of Ji Tianxing. This shows how strong and powerful he is. That's right. Ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch nodded and said in a serious tone, Even if you and I want to kill the enemy, we don't have the corresponding strength. We can't be reckless. Devil Monarch Blood's lips curled into a cold smile as he said in a playful tone, With our strength, we naturally can't kill Ji Tianxing, nor can we obtain such a huge contribution. However, we only need to report the news and track Ji Tianxing's location. Naturally, there will be stronger great devil saints who will take his lowly life. Ghostly Shadow Demon Monarch raised his eyebrows and immediately understood what he meant. He nodded with a cold smile on his face. In the wee hours of the morning, the night was not over, but the light was about to come. The sky was still covered with gray clouds, and the cold wind was howling. Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and Luoli were riding 2 divine dragons and flying in the sky. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, the 3 of them avoided Black Sun City. At this time, the 3 of them had arrived near the Black Sun Abyss. 100 miles in front of them was a huge pitch-black abyss. It was a ravine that ran from west to east, thousands of miles long and 200 miles wide. The ravine was bottomless, and it was shrouded in demonic fog all year round, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Looking down from the sky, this huge ravine looked like a terrifying sword mark left behind by a god who had slashed the mountains and rivers. It also looked like a huge crack that had split the earth. The 2 divine dragons sped up and flew toward the Black Sun Abyss. Luoli stood on the dragon's back and spoke to Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao via divine sense. The Black Sun Abyss is right in front of us. Over the past few years, there have been many heavenly anomalies here. The demon race experts were also alarmed and searched many times, but they didn't find any clues. However, in the abyss, they found a large number of powerful demonic beasts, as well as some ancient ruins and remnant souls. According to my guess, the abyss may have been the cave abode of a demon race expert thousands of years ago. Due to some reason, the cave abode collapsed, causing the earth to collapse, and this abyss appeared. The ancient ruins and powerful demonic aura attracted hundreds of demonic beasts and caused many anomalies. However, in recent years, the demon race experts have frequently explored this place and searched it countless times. No one can be sure if the divine orb is hidden here, so don't get your hopes up. Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "Even if there's only a sliver of hope, we won't give up. How can we know if it's real without trying?" Luoli nodded slightly and said, "Our whereabouts have been exposed, and we are in a very dangerous situation. We must move quickly. The sooner we finish exploring the Black Sun Abyss, the sooner we leave this place." Soon, the 2 divine dragons entered the abyss shrouded in black fog. The vast abyss was completely filled with black fog and demonic aura. There was almost no light, and they couldn't see the surroundings. Everyone used their consciousness to cover hundreds of miles and carefully searched. The walls on both sides of the cliff were so steep that they were almost straight. Not a single blade of grass grew on the cold gray walls, but many black mushrooms and moss grew on them. To the demon race, these things were excellent tonics and medicinal ingredients. To other races, they were evil and poisonous. The 3 of them were ambushed before they reached the bottom of the abyss. Suddenly, a few pairs of giant scarlet eyes appeared in the surrounding black fog, emitting a bloodthirsty light. Roar! Caw! Several low, vigorous, and ear-piercing beast roars quickly approached from all directions. In the next moment, 4 gigantic demonic beasts with violent auras rushed out of the black fog. The one in the east was a blood-winged demonic leopard that was more than 300 meters long. It was blood-red in color and had 2 pairs of wide blood wings. The one in the west was a black crow that was more than 300 meters wide. It had 3 heads and was surrounded by evil demonic aura. The demonic beasts that rushed out from the south and north were a 5-colored python that was more than 300 meters long, and a demonic wolf that was as large as a mountain. The python had 2 heads that spat out a 5-colored poisonous fog. The demonic wolf's 4 hooves burned with ice-blue soul fire, and its entire body emitted an extremely cold aura. Its ice-blue eyes had double pupils. These bloodthirsty demonic beasts weren't like the experts of the demon race who could speak a few simple words. Chapter 2025. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 had long expected the appearance of the 4 demonic beasts. They even knew that there were far more demonic beasts in the Black Sun Abyss. It was because of this that this place became a forbidden area. Martial artists below the Tribulation Transcendence realm did not dare to enter, or they would die. After all, the demonic beasts that could occupy this place were all at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The 4 demonic beasts before them were no exception. The weakest was at the 2nd tier of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The strongest, the blood-winged demonic leopard, was at the 4th tier of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianqing and the other two demonic beasts launched a counterattack without hesitation. Both sides were determined to kill each other. They used powerful secret techniques and fought in the abyss until the sky darkened and the earth darkened, splashing brilliance everywhere. The colorful radiance of dermic powers clashed fiercely, bursting out wave after wave of shock waves that rippled outwards. Loud rumbling sounds reverberated in the abyss. The earth was shaking, and the steep rock walls on both sides of the abyss were also cracked, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. This battle lasted for only 20 breaths of time before it quickly ended. There was no doubt about the fate of the 4 demonic beasts. They were blasted into smithereens. Even their souls were devoured by the sword of burial of heaven. To the 4 demonic beasts, this was a tragedy and disaster. To the many demonic beasts in the Black Sun Abyss, this was a sign of impending danger. But to Ji Tianqing and the other 2, this was just a small interlude, not worth mentioning. The 3 rode the demonic beasts and continued flying downwards. Not long after, the 3 landed at the bottom of the abyss. The bottom of the abyss was 200 miles below the ground. The ground was made of hard black rock, full of ravines and cracks. However, the bottom of the abyss was filled with water, at least 100 feet deep. The black water was as still as death, without any ripples. It covered many cracks, boulders, and broken walls. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 explored from west to east, releasing their divine senses into the water to investigate the situation underground. Within 15 minutes, the 3 found many traces. There were many corpses of demonic beasts, as well as tattered dermic treasures and weapon fragments. There were also many broken walls submerged in the black water. It was obvious that the situation was as Luoli had guessed. There used to be grand palaces and buildings here. They were most likely the cave abodes of demon race experts. Unfortunately, no matter how grand the palaces were, they were all in ruins, submerged in the long river of history. Only a few wide and thick dilapidated walls were left, still telling the story of the past glory. The 3 had they searched 100 miles away when they encountered trouble. It was still an attack of magical beasts, but there were as many as 9 of them. The 9 demonic beasts of heaven were overlords of tribulation, transcendence. They were the demonic beasts, demonic transcendence, were they transcendence. The demonic beasts. Beasts, demonic transcendence, transcended transcendence, transcending transcendence be. Soon, another earth-shattering battle began in the abyss. Hundreds of ferocious demonic beasts besieged Ji Tianqing's group and the 2 divine dragons, unleashing devastating attacks. The 3 of them also fought back with all their might, using powerful secret techniques to quickly slaughter those demonic beasts. Both sides fought fiercely. Rumbling sounds could be heard, and terrifying shockwaves could be heard. At the bottom of the abyss, deep pits and cracks were blasted open one after another. The rock walls on both sides of the abyss were also shattered. Countless rocks collapsed and smashed into the black water at the bottom of the abyss. The earth was trembling violently, shocking the area within 1,000 miles. The dazzling radiance of the spell penetrated the darkness of the abyss, and was reflected in the night sky like a colorful rainbow. This battle lasted for a quarter of an hour, and 200 miles of the abyss was completely destroyed. Hundreds of demonic beasts suffered heavy casualties. More than 90 of them were killed, and only a few demonic beasts managed to escape. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 did not chase after them to avoid wasting time. Anyway, after this battle, the magical beasts in the abyss were scared out of their wits. The strongest tribulation transcendence demonic beasts were basically all killed, and the remaining small fries were not a threat. In the next hour, no more demonic beasts attacked them. They all hid far away. In this hour, the 3 of them searched hundreds of miles. They found many broken artifacts and weapon fragments, ancient demonic inscriptions, and palace ruins. But these things were not what they were looking for. There was still no clue about the divine pearl they desperately wanted. The 3 of them were unwilling to give up, and continued to search in the abyss. After a full 8 hours, the 3 of them reached the eastern end of the abyss. Everyone's eyes were filled with disappointment. Luoli was still unwilling. She turned to Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, you still can't sense the divine pearl's aura?" Yin Yao shook her head and said calmly, "No. Maybe the divine pearl isn't here at all." Ji Tianqing believed in her judgment and comforted her. "Yao Yao, don't worry. We weren't sure where the divine pearl was hidden in the first place. We came to the Black Sun Abyss with the mentality of trying our luck. If it's not here, we can just find another place." Before he could finish, the abyss above his head suddenly lit up with a dazzling bloody light. Swoosh! That dark red blood light poured down from the top of the abyss like a flood. In the blink of an eye, the blood light formed a huge barrier that covered a radius of 200 miles. A violent and fierce aura as heavy as a mountain was released from the blood light barrier, fiercely suppressing Ji Tianqing and the other two. The three of them immediately changed their expressions, a cold light surging in their eyes. "Damn it! The demons found us and have already chased us here." Ji Tianqing frowned, his eyes flashing with a cold light. Luo Li also frowned, a murderous intent flashing in her clear eyes. "No matter, since they came to die, I'll make sure they don't return." With that, the three of them rode the two divine dragons and flew above the abyss. Swoosh swoosh. 10 breaths later, the three of them flew out of the Black Sun Abyss and arrived above it. It was already afternoon. The golden setting sun shone through the clouds in the sky, sprinkling golden halos. On the cliffs on both sides of the Black Sun Abyss, hundreds of demon experts stood in the surrounding sky. There were more than 400 of them, all of them at the Essence Spirit Realm, the elites of the demon race. They were working together to cast a spell to increase the power of the bloodlight array that covered a radius of 200 miles. In the sky not far from Ji Tianqing, and the other two stood a dozen demon generals, all of them Tribulation Transcendence Realm experts. Their leader was dressed in a purple robe, with a head full of white hair. His facial features were as sharp as a knife, and he exuded a dignified aura. Standing beside him was a wizened old man in a purple robe, leaning on a ghost head staff. Chapter 2026. Behind the ghost shadow demon monarch and the ancient blood demon monarch stood 12 tribulation passing experts. These people were the generals of Black Sun City and the powerhouses of the surrounding tribes. Ji Tianqing glanced over and saw that Elder Wuxia was among the crowd. His pupils shrank, and a glint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The Moonless Tribe's elder really fled to Black Sun City to report. It seems that this group of demons must be the powerhouses of Black Sun City, he said in a low voice. Luo Li nodded in agreement and said coldly, "The surrounding dozens of tribes are under the jurisdiction of Black Sun City. Black Sun City is very close to here. After receiving Elder Moonless' report, they will be able to mobilize a large number of powerhouses to hunt us down in the shortest time possible." Yin Yao was a little worried and said in a low voice, "It was already very difficult for us to fight hundreds of demonic beasts, and we consumed a lot of our magic power. Now the dozen or so tribulation stage powerhouses of Black Sun City have brought more than 400 primordial soul stage powerhouses. No matter how strong we are outnumbered and can't defeat so many powerhouses. What's more, the other side has the geographical advantage and set up an ambush in advance." Luo Li coldly snorted and said with disdain, "Back in the Moonless Tribe, we killed 100,000 demon clansmen. What are these mere 400 demon clansmen? As a martial saint, I can block 1,000,000 troops with one sword. What is there to fear? You don't have to worry, I will protect you well." These words were not arrogant, but the confidence of a martial saint powerhouse. Blocking 1,000,000 troops with one sword was not Luo Li boasting, but a fair evaluation of a martial saint powerhouse in the martial world. Of course, the so-called million soldiers were only elite soldiers. They were definitely not transcendent martial artists above the spirit refinement realm. At this moment, Dark Blood Demon King, who was the leader, opened his mouth. He looked at Ji Tianqing proudly and said in a majestic tone, "Ji Tianqing, I heard that you are the #1 genius of the human race, and also the mortal enemy of our race. You have all kinds of divine abilities. But today, I see that you are just SOSO. You have fallen into my hands. You wouldn't have thought of that, would you? This sovereign has grasped an ancient fiend Dao divine ability. Even from tens of thousands of miles away, I can still search for your whereabouts." Ji Tianxing was very familiar with the various magical abilities of the demonic Dao. The other party had Elder Wu Yue's information and used some demonic arts, so it wasn't strange for them to find him. He looked expressionlessly at Devil Monarch Blood. If I'm not wrong, you should be the city lord of Black Sun City. With the strength of the 8th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, he should be one of the 36 demon monarchs. Demon Lord Blood immediately revealed a proud look and sneered. That's right. I am the 9th Devil Monarch, Shuiyu. After that, he pointed at the ghost Shadow Devil Monarch beside him and said arrogantly, this one beside me is the 4th Devil Monarch, Ghost Shadow. Ji Tianxing, this sovereign and the ghostly Shadow Devil Monarch have joined hands and mobilized more than 450 elite experts to set up the Heavenly Devil God-slaying array here, just to kill you on the spot. You're a smart person. You should know that you're going to die today. Demon Lord Blood's powerful voice rang out in the air above the abyss, spreading for a radius of 200 miles. Hearing this, all the demons sneered complacently. Ji Tianxing didn't care and sneered disdainfully. You're just a mere demon monarch. Even if you have more than 400 lackeys, you're still a clown. Where did you get the courage to be so arrogant? Even your Shuepao ancestor and Azura demon saint will die under my sword. Who do you think you are? Such arrogant words made Demon Lord Blood so angry that his face turned black, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. Ghost Shadow Devil Monarch, who had been silent, finally stepped forward and spoke. His turbid old eyes revealed a sinister light as he sneered. The 2 demon saints were careless and fell into the trap of a despicable person like you. Now we've set up the Heavenly Devil God-slaying array to kill you. Let's see how you're going to escape. With more than 400 nascent soul realm experts controlling the array, it's enough to kill 99% of the martial saints. No matter how capable you are, you will still be crushed to pieces today, dying without a burial ground. You can spout as much nonsense as you want. In any case, these are your last words. Seeing this, Yin Yao frowned slightly. Suddenly understanding something, she hastily sent a sound transmission to Ji Tianxing. Tianxing, the demon race has always been sinister and crafty. These people are just stalling for time. Luo Li also heard her sound transmission and said, that's right. They have the advantage, but they're not in a rush to attack. They truly are afraid of our strength, and are trying to stall for time. However, Yao Yao, don't be in such a rush. If they're stalling for time, isn't your husband also stalling for time? Oh. Yin Yao raised an eyebrow and looked at Ji Tianxing in puzzlement. Ji Tianxing was still arguing with the 2 devil sovereigns. He secretly sent her an explanation. Shuiyu and Gue Ying, the 2 devil sovereigns, have brought many experts to surround them, but they aren't confident in succeeding. They definitely have a backup plan. They're just trying to stall for time and wait for the demon saint experts to come. That's why we can't fight them. We have to end this quickly and leave this place. Yin Yao immediately understood what he meant. She hastily asked, Tianxing, what method do you have? Ji Tianxing said, I've already performed the God Eye mystic art to see through this Heavenly Devil God-slaying formation. This is a top-tier tribulation level formation with extraordinary power. However, I've already found 3 weak points in the formation. I've secretly controlled the energy of heaven and earth to accumulate enough energy. Once the battle starts, I'll break the formation and bring everyone out. So that's how it is. Yin Yao immediately understood and said without the slightest hesitation, Tianxing, don't worry. We'll cover you. Just as she said that, Shuiyu and Ghost Shadow were infuriated by Ji Tianxing. They could no longer suppress their killing intent. Demon Monarch Shuiyu immediately gave the order and roared, Ji Tianxing, you arrogant bastard. This monarch will kill you right now and grind your bones to dust. Activate the formation with all your strength and kill him for me. Upon hearing his command, more than 400 primordial soul realm experts activated the formation with all their might and released powerful attacks. The huge blood-red barrier immediately released black fog, blood-red light, and soul fire. They formed 100,000 blades of light and blood-red fire that rained down on Ji Tianxing and the other 2. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, the area above the abyss became a world of blood-red light and blue fire. The destructive power poured down, making it impossible for Ji Tianxing and the other two demon monarchs to dodge. The two demon monarchs roared angrily and used their huge bodies to protect everyone. At the same time, they spat out dragon breath at the blood-red light and soul fire that filled the sky. Ji Tianxing, break the formation quickly. I'll cover you. Chapter 2027. Boom, 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 boom. Intense collisions sounded in the sky above the abyss. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, Luo Li, the Black Dragon, and the Glazed Fire Dragon were all fighting with all their might to resist the power of the demon god-slaying array. Colorful dermic powers collided fiercely and created a sky full of debris. It was like a fire that shot into the sky and lit up the surrounding hundreds of miles. Violent and devastating shockwaves violently burst forth, causing the surrounding abysses to collapse under the impact. The earth shook violently, and the cliffs on both sides of the abyss also cracked continuously. An endless amount of gravel and soil fell to the bottom of the abyss, making muffled rumbling noises. The area immediately became chaotic. Luo Li did as she said. She led the charge and resisted the power of the array with all her might, trying her best to protect Yun Yao. The two divine dragons also fought back with all their might and used all kinds of Dragon Clan secret techniques. However, everyone could only resist the power of the array. The effect of the counterattack was very weak. It was absolutely impossible to break the formation. This was what Ji Tianxing had expected. Therefore, when the battle started, he cast spells to resist the power of the array and to break the array at the same time. He quietly approached the southwest corner and secretly controlled the power of heaven and earth. He released a powerful force that could penetrate everything and attack the bloodlight barrier. Boom. Crack. Following a thunderous boom, a shallow crack appeared on the blood-red light barrier, and it began to tremble violently. About 100 feet away from the crack, there were two Essence Soul Realm experts who were focused on casting spells. They did not expect that the formation would suddenly be attacked and cracks would appear. The powerful impact forced the two of them back 10 steps. Their faces were as pale as paper. The two of them widened their eyes in shock. They could not believe what they had just seen. After regaining their senses, the two of them hurriedly flew back to their original positions and cast spells with all their might to repair the long crack. In the southwest corner, there were 3 formation nodes and over 100 formation veins in the bloody light barrier, which was about 30 meters wide. Ordinary people might not be able to see the clues, but Ji Tianxing could see that this was one of the 3 weak points of the formation. He wanted to use this as a breakthrough point to blast open the heavenly demon god-slaying formation and lead everyone out of the encirclement. Piercing sword. Ji Tianxing coldly shouted. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he unleashed his full power and fiercely stabbed out. Swish. A speck of cold light suddenly appeared, as if it had disappeared. In the next instant, the cold light pierced through the crack in the bloodlight barrier and exploded. Boom! A dazzling cold light suddenly blossomed in the crack, like a mushroom cloud. The crack, which was more than 3 zhang long, suddenly expanded several times. It was torn to 10 zhang long, which was the width of a palm. Unfortunately, the bloodlight barrier was not completely broken. There was still a thin layer of bloodlight in the cracks. Ji Tianxing saw the hope of escaping. His spirits were lifted. He once again waved the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed at the crack. However, the 2 devil monarchs and the 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, who were standing above the abyss, had already noticed the clues. Everyone's primary target was him, so their attention was always on him. When he blasted a crack in the blood-light barrier, the 2 devil monarchs were already furious and sent people to stop him. At this moment, he was about to stab the crack with his sword. The 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage had already entered the array and pounced on him with murderous intent. Thief, don't even think about escaping. Lowly human reptile, don't even think about destroying the array. Ji Tianxing. Today you will die without a doubt. There will be no escape. Thief, give me your life. The 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, including Elder Wuxia, all held their weapons and magic treasures. They desperately performed their secret methods and besieged Ji Tianqing. The mountain-like evil demon's shadow, the overwhelming blood-red light, the ice-blue soul fire, and all kinds of black light and sharp blades, as well as the highly toxic black fog, poured down in torrents. The area within a radius of 10 miles was covered. Ji Tianqing was in danger, and could only turn around to face the enemies. He used the heavenly dragon's 7 steps, and his body turned into a white light phantom. He flashed in the blood light all over the sky and dodged all kinds of attacks. At the same time, he waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and slashed out sword light all over the sky. 7-star sword. 49 huge golden swords, all of which were more than 300 zhang long, were very powerful. Boom 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 boom. With a series of dull noises, the 49 swordlights defeated all kinds of secret attacks. Although he successfully resolved the first round of attacks from the 12 powerhouses. However, the 12 powerhouses in the tribulation stage were very brave, and immediately launched a second round of fierce attacks. Monstrous demonic light. Floating blood sea. Grand sun black soul sword. Attacking life and seizing soul. Everyone was full of killing intent. They roared with ferocious faces and used their trump cards to besiege Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing couldn't get away, nor could he continue to break the array. He could only concentrate on resisting and fighting back. In just 10 breaths, the two sides had exchanged more than a dozen moves in the array. Ji Tianqing was hit several times by the swords and was hit by the devil chi and the bloodlight blades more than a dozen times. However, his physical defense was comparable to that of a martial sage. The attacks of these powerhouses in the tribulation stage couldn't hurt him at all. However, the secret methods he used with all his strength destroyed the bodies of 3 powerhouses in the tribulation stage, and injured 5 of them. Elder Wuxia was the devil he hated the most. Of course, he had the worst ending. Not only was his body smashed into powder, but his divine soul was also seriously injured. He turned into a ball of dark purple light, and floated in the sky above the abyss. It was a pity that these devil clan powerhouses were not afraid of death. They had been blinded by anger and killing intent. They didn't know fear at all, and didn't retreat at all. They continued to besiege Ji Tianqing without caring about anything. Even if they died on the spot, they still wanted to bite off a piece of meat from Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing felt a headache coming on. He only wanted to kill these devil clan powerhouses as soon as possible and continue to break the array. After all, the process of breaking the array couldn't be stopped halfway. Otherwise, the crack would be repaired, and it would heal soon. Unfortunately, these devil clan powerhouses were in the heavenly devil god-slaying array, and their strength was greatly enhanced. In a short time, it would be difficult for Ji Tianqing to kill them. Just as Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with anxiety, a cold and clear voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Ji Tianqing, break the array quickly. I'm coming to help you. It was Luo Li's voice. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw Luo Li's body glowing with an icy blue brilliance. It was as if she was burning with flames as she rushed over like a stream of light. She held an ice crystal short sword in each hand and rushed toward the few devil clan powerhouses as fast as lightning. In an instant, she attacked 3 times, leaving behind 3 illusions. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the 3 devil clan powerhouses who were surrounded by the icy blue illusions froze on the spot and stopped moving. Their bodies ignited with icy blue flames and quickly turned into ashes, scattering in the sky. Chapter 2028. Luo Li was indeed a martial saint. She killed 3 demon clan powerhouses in an instant. The 3 tribulation realm powerhouses didn't even manage to see how Luo Li had acted even when they died. Seeing this scene, the other demon clan powerhouses were overwhelmed with shock and fear towards Luo Li. Everyone quietly took a few steps back and changed their formation to attack Luo Li together. Luo Li was fearless. She waved the ice crystal short sword with both hands and flashed through the crowd, killing one powerhouse after another. The pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced. He ignored the demon clan powerhouses and focused on breaking the array. In the southwest corner, the crack on the bloodlight barrier was more than half repaired. There was only a 2-foot-long crack left. Furthermore, The Blood Demon Monarch saw through it and gathered more than 20 Essence Soul Stage powerhouses to repair this area. At most, the crack would be repaired in 10 breaths of time. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's face darkened. His eyes were filled with cold murderous intent. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the Heaven Burier sword with both hands and slashed out a huge golden sword with all his strength, ruthlessly slashing at the crack. Kaboom! A deafening explosion sounded, and the blood-light barrier trembled violently. That shallow scar, which was more than 20 feet long, expanded to more than 80 feet long and about half a finger deep. The 20 Essence Soul Stage powerhouses were also hit by the huge impact. They all retreated 100 feet and were panting with pale faces. Ji Tianqing did not give them any time to breathe. He immediately raised his left palm and released a sacred golden flame. God-slaying spear. Whoosh! The sacred golden flames immediately transformed into a 3-meter-long divine spear. With a godly might that could pierce through all things, the spear viciously stabbed toward the crack. Kaboom! A thunderous boom resounded through the clouds and shook the heavens and the earth. The spear pierced the bloodlight barrier and blasted a big hole in it. Dense cracks appeared on both sides of the hole, and the crack was completely torn apart. Along with a wave of crisp cracking sounds, the cracks exploded into pieces with a bang, and countless pieces of bloody light sprayed out. An 80-zhang-long gap suddenly appeared. A destructive shockwave spread out in all directions. More than 20 Immortal Soul Stage cultivators were sent tumbling in all directions by the impact of the impact. Everyone was covered in blood and wounds. Half of them had even fainted. The cliffs on both sides of the abyss also suffered from the destructive impact and completely collapsed. Inexhaustible rocks and soil poured into the abyss like a flood. For a time, the scene was extremely chaotic. Ji Tianqing made a prompt decision and rushed out of the gap. With a flash of his figure, he escaped from the ceiling formation. Not far away, Yun Yao and the 2 mystical dragons were rushing over with all their might. Luoli was not in a hurry to retreat. While protecting Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons, she did not forget to kill the 2 powerhouses in the tribulation stage. Swoosh! Swoosh! 3 streaks of light flashed past consecutively. Yin Yao and the 2 divine dragons passed through the gap and escaped from the heavenly devil god-slaying formation. Ji Tianqing rushed to the front, swinging his sword and killing more than 20 immortal divinity experts, like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep. Swing your sword. Broken moon sword. Broken sun sword. The ultimate sword techniques of the 9 swords of the burial of heaven were displayed one by one, and golden sword shadows covered the sky and earth. Those more than 20 immortal divinity experts were already severely injured. How could they resist his attacks? In a short while more than 10 immortal divinity experts died under Ji Tianqing's sword. Not only was his physical body slashed to pieces, even his divine soul was shattered. The remaining few severely injured immortal divinity experts saw that the situation was not good and fled in advance. The obstacles outside the formation were swept away. There were no more obstacles in front of them. Ji Tianqing hurriedly brought Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons and flew towards the north of the abyss. However, just as he flew 1,000 feet away, 2 streaks of bright red light flashed in front of him and blocked his way. He took a closer look and saw that it was the Ghost Shadow Demon Lord and the Ancient Blood Demon Lord. Behind the 2 of them, there were more than 40 immortal divinity experts. All of them were rushing over with murderous intent. The hundreds of immortal soul stage elders around the bloodlight barrier also surged forward under the command of the Ancient Blood Demon Lord. Since Ji Tianqing and the rest had already escaped from the formation, there was no point in them continuing to control the formation. Therefore they rushed over to surround and intercept Ji Tianqing and the rest. Ji Tianqing, you have indeed impressed me. You actually managed to break the demon god-slaying formation. However, I have already said that you will definitely die today. I will not let you escape. The Ancient Blood Demon Lord stared at Ji Tianqing with a ferocious expression and shouted in a cold voice. As he finished speaking, he held a 5-feet-long blood-red sword in his hands and charged towards Ji Tianqing. The Ancient Blood Demon Lord also changed his old appearance. He waved his ghost head staff and released hundreds of evil spirits that pounced towards Ji Tianqing. The immortal divinity experts in all directions also lined up in battle formations. They worked together to release sharp blood-red blades that flooded the area within a 10-mile radius. Another fierce battle broke out in an instant. Ji Tianxing held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and fought against 2 demon lords alone. He used all kinds of secret techniques and had the upper hand. The 2 demon lords were not his match even when they joined forces. They were forced to retreat and were constantly injured. Fortunately, there were hundreds of immortal divinity experts surrounding Ji Tianxing and restraining him. They were always able to help the 2 demon lords out. If not, the 2 demon lords would have ended up in an even more tragic state. Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons were surrounded by hundreds of immortal divinity experts and were in a very dangerous situation. They were exhausted from defending against the attacks and could only retreat continuously. There was no way for them to counterattack. This was especially so for the 2 mystical dragons. In order to protect Yun Yao's safety, they were covered in injuries. Fortunately, Luo Li arrived in time. She used a secret technique to protect herself and formed a dark yellow shield to protect Yun Yao. At the same time, she released a destructive sword blade storm. 100,000 ice crystal blades formed a hurricane and started a massacre in the sky. Once those immortal divinity experts were swept up by the sword blade storm, they would be smashed to pieces and their souls destroyed. Everyone fought as they fled. They kept moving the battlefield away from the Black Sun Abyss. After 2 hours, the battle finally came to an end. Luo Li's methods were the most terrifying, and she killed the most people. She alone had killed more than 200 immortal divinity stage experts. In addition to the 10 tribulation stage experts she had killed earlier, her battle achievements could be said to be outstanding. Moreover, she was completely unscathed. No one could hurt her. Ji Tianxing also killed dozens of immortal divinity experts and even Evil Blood Demon Lord. Even Evil Blood Demon Lord's arms were cut off, and his body was almost destroyed. He was severely injured. As for himself, he only suffered some minor injuries. His white robe was stained with demon blood, and he looked a little miserable. As for Yun Yao and the 2 divine dragons, they did not kill many enemies, but they were seriously injured. If not for Luo Li and Ji Tianxing's protection, they would have been in deep trouble. At this point, the demons were almost completely wiped out. Only Evil Blood Demon Lord and more than 30 injured experts were left. Chapter 2029. Spectre Demon Monarch fled back to Black Sun City in a sorry state with a bunch of defeated soldiers. Ji Tianxing, Luo Li, and the others didn't waste time chasing after them. Riding the 2 dragons, they continued to fly north, getting further and further away from Black Sun City. 12 hours later it was dawn. Everyone stopped to rest and recuperate in a desolate mountain range. Ji Tianxing and Luo Li were fine. They just took out a few pills and quickly recovered their magic power. Yun Yao was only slightly injured. After being treated by Ji Tianxing and taking medicinal pills to recuperate, there was no problem. The 2 dragons were the most seriously injured. They were covered in blood, wounds and holes. Many dragon scales had fallen off. Fortunately, the dragon clan's recovery ability was strong. After Ji Tianxing and Luo Li's treatment, their injuries quickly stabilized. Everyone hid in the depths of the mountain range and recuperated for an entire day. Until the next morning, when the 2 dragons had recovered 80% of their strength, they continued on their journey. The glazed fire dragon and the black dragon flew side by side, rushing north. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Luo Li stood on the back of the dragons, looking ahead calmly and talking through voice transmissions. In the Battle of the Black Sun Abyss, we were attacked by more than 400 experts, but we were able to escape smoothly and kill 90% of the Demon Clan experts. It's incredible. If this matter were to spread, it would cause an uproar on the continent and shock the world. Ji Tianxing said with a calm expression as he glanced at Luo Li. Luo Li looked ahead expressionlessly and said coldly, "I've only heard that the Demon Clan is bloodthirsty and inhumane. After the Demon Clan army invaded the Kingdom of God, I didn't go to the northern border to participate in the battle. Now that I've gone deep into the Demon Clan's hinterland and fought with them personally, I know how hateful and terrifying the Demon Clan is. Such a sinister, cunning, cruel, and bloodthirsty race deserves to be killed. After saying that, she turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing and said indifferently, "As for the shock and discussion of the world, it's just a false reputation. I don't need it." Ji Tianxing looked straight ahead with a playful smile on his face. In the past, he only knew that Luo Li had a noble status, a cold personality, and powerful strength. Now, after so many days of interaction, he finally understood Luo Li better. The three of them were silent, temporarily unable to say anything. Yin Yao broke the silence and said worriedly, "The previous battles were all small skirmishes. The battle in the Black Sun Abyss this time will definitely catch the attention of the devil race. Our identities and whereabouts will be completely exposed. From now on, our operations will become more and more dangerous and difficult. We must be even more careful." Ji Tianxing nodded and said solemnly, "There are no divine pearls in the Black Sun Abyss. Our next target is the Ghost Desert, which is millions of miles away. It's one of the few forbidden areas of the devil race. It's rumored to be the remains of an ancient battlefield, and is extremely dangerous. Not only are there powerful demonic beasts, but there are also demonic experts, ghosts and demons. Even the environment of the Ghost Desert is very harsh, and there are many hidden formations and traps." Luo Li waved her hand and said indifferently, "Although the Ghost Desert is a forbidden area, it's nothing to us. The only ones who are a threat to us are the four great demon saints of the devil race. I have a premonition that if the fourth divine pearl is really in the North Underworld Mountain, it's very likely to be in the Ghost Desert." Yin Yao frowned and asked in puzzlement, "Luo Li, why are you so sure?" Luo Li thought for a moment and shook her head. "I don't know why. It's just a premonition." Ji Tianxing smiled and said playfully, "I hope your premonition is accurate. If so, we will be able to complete the mission soon. Otherwise, we will have to search for the third target and go deeper into the North Underworld Mountain. The situation will be even more dangerous." A cold light flashed in Luo Li's eyes and she said coldly, "Despicable devil race, I will kill them all. No matter how dangerous it is, I will help Yao Yao complete the mission and return to the kingdom of God smoothly." She was absolutely loyal to the Luo Shui martial god. Even if she had to pay with her life, she would complete the mission given by the Luo Shui martial god. Unknowingly, 6 days had passed. In the evening, the two divine dragons carried Ji Tianxing and the other two to the Ghost Desert. It was a vast desert, and it was said that it was hundreds of thousands of miles wide. The desert was surrounded by majestic mountains, and it was like a tall city wall that protected the Ghost Desert. The Ghost Desert was very low and there were no pools of water. It had been dry and barren since ancient times. What was even stranger was that the endless sand in the desert was not golden but dark brown. Looking from afar, the pitch-black desert was filled with a thin layer of black fog, and it looked very mysterious. The closer it was to the night, the colder the temperature in the desert was. The mysterious black fog was getting thicker and thicker, and it formed layers of fog barriers that blocked the view of the desert. After the two divine dragons flew into the Ghost Desert, they quickly disappeared into the mysterious black fog. The two of them slowed down and flew deeper into the desert while releasing their divine senses to check the surroundings. Ji Tianxing, Luo Li, and Yin Yao were not idle as they released their divine senses to search the desert. The Ghost Desert is too vast and has a radius of at least 500,000 miles. If we were to search like this, we would not miss anything, but it would take us at least half a month. Half a month? That would be enough for the devil race to deploy their troops. I'm afraid that before we find the God Pearl, the four great devil sages will bring an army of 100,000 to besiege us. If I am close to the God Pearl, I will be able to sense it. I hope that the heavens will watch over us and let us find the God Pearl soon." The three of them discussed as they searched the desert. For hours later, trouble came for them. More than 10 ferocious-looking spirits appeared around them and floated silently in the night sky. Those spirits were about 300 meters tall and had green faces and fangs. Their hair was disheveled, and they looked terrifying. They did not have legs, but they had 3 heads and 6 arms. Their appearance was so strange that it sent chills down one's spine. More importantly, The strength of those spirits was comparable to a powerhouse in the 5th or 6th stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianxing used the God's Eye secret technique and discovered that the spirits were formed by various remnant souls. There were remnant souls of ancient powerhouses, modern adventurers, and devil race powerhouses. There were even remnant souls of powerful devil beasts. All in all, these spirits were very powerful. They would constantly kill living beings and devour their remnant souls to strengthen themselves. Their intelligence was not high, and their aura was very chaotic. However, they did not know pain or fear. They only acted based on their instincts and had an almost immortal body. Ji Tianxing glanced at Luoli and saw that she was frowning as she observed the spirits. He reminded her, "Spirits are ghosts and are not made of flesh and blood. You cannot use normal spells to deal with them." Chapter 2030. Although the dozens of ghosts, whose strength was comparable to a powerhouse in the crossing calamity stage, were indeed ferocious and terrifying. However, to Ji Tianxing and the other two, they were not considered dangerous. They were just a little troublesome. The three of them had mastered the soul secret technique. They used the soul secret technique one after another, and quickly defeated the dozens of ghosts. However, the ghosts were extremely tenacious. Even if they were smashed into pieces, they could still be pieced together and continue to fight. Even Luoli had to expend a lot of effort before she was able to kill the two ghosts. As for the remaining ghosts, Ji Tianxing used the divine light of the heaven-patching pearl to purify and disperse them. The three of them spent more than an hour to solve this problem. Fortunately, no one was injured. The three of them rested for a while and continued to search in the ghost desert. The next morning, the three of them rode on the two divine dragons and were searching in the desert. Suddenly, a black and purple streamer flew from the sky and fell into Ji Tianxing's palm. After the streamer disappeared, a jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing lowered his head and looked at the jade slip. He raised his eyebrows subconsciously and was a little confused. Yin Yao also turned her head and looked at him. She could not help but ask, "Tianxing, who sent you the communication jade slip?" Luoli stared at the communication jade slip. Her face became gloomy and she asked coldly, "That's strange. The communication jade slip in your palm is actually black and purple and contains demon chi? Ji Tianxing, did the demon clan send you a message? Are you in contact with the demon clan?" Seeing that Luoli was suspicious, Ji Tianxing calmly explained, "It is indeed the communication jade slip that the demon clan usually uses. However, the person who sent me the message is not a demon clan member. It is my family member who has infiltrated the demon clan to be my spy." Family member? Informant? Yin Yao immediately frowned. She was full of doubts, but she couldn't think of a reason. Luoli was also confused. She shook her head and said, "Your family member? Then it is a human? How can a human disguise as a demon clan member?" Ji Tianxing did not explain further. He lowered his head and looked at the communication jade slip. He used his divine sense to read the content. The content of the jade slip was very short. There was only one short sentence. "Brother Tianxing, a few days ago, the great demon saint led a large group of experts and left the demon palace. He said that he would kill you personally. Run." The words in the jade slip were of course from Ji Ke's mouth. Her tone was very anxious and urgent. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned with a serious look in his eyes. Yin Yao and Luoli were puzzled and quickly asked, "Tianxing, what's the news? What the hell is going on?" Ji Tianxing slowly put away the communication jade slip. He looked at Yin Yao and said in a serious tone, "Yao Yao, there's something I haven't told you. Demon 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 god. To the demon 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 demon." Those experts were captured and brought back to the demon god's lair. He used an ancient demon Dao secret technique to refine them into blood-robed guards. Unfortunately, Ke was among them. She was also captured and brought to the demon clan's lair. But fortunately, she had another fortuitous encounter and was not truly demonized. Since then, she has been hiding in the demon clan's lair. She often sends me messages and reports. What? It was the first time that Yin Yao had heard of this. She was shocked and worried. She was captured and brought to the demon clan's lair. She became a blood-robed guard? No. This is too dangerous. The demon clan has always been treacherous and cunning. Ku is hiding in the demon clan's lair, and often sends you messages. Her identity will be exposed sooner or later. Ku, doesn't she want to live anymore? Tianqing, you have to make her leave as soon as possible. Tianqing looked at her calmly. He shook his head and said, Yao Yao, I tried to persuade Ku, but she insisted on being a spy. I couldn't persuade her. However, you don't have to worry too much. Ku has a treasure to protect her body. Her disguise is perfect. Even I can't tell the difference. Even if she really encounters danger, that treasure can protect her. She won't lose her life. Hearing his words, Yin Yao heaved a sigh of relief and felt much more at ease. Luo Li couldn't wait any longer. She asked, Tianqing, did Ku send you a message? Did she report the demon clan's lair? Tianqing nodded and said, Ku sent me a message. The great demon saint has left the demon clan's lair with a large number of experts to kill us. This time the enemy has a lot of people. They are coming with great momentum. They are determined to win. The great demon saint. Yin Yao frowned and said worriedly, before the return of the ancestor demon god, he was the strongest expert of the demon clan. He was the expert closest to becoming a god. We have to leave the North Underworld Mountain as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will be in danger of losing our lives. Luo Li's pupils shrank. A sharp cold light flashed in her eyes. However, she wasn't afraid. She said proudly, I have heard of the great demon saint's fierce name. However, I have never had the chance to see it. If he really finds us, I will fight with him and see how strong he is. Yao Yao, don't worry. With me here, no one can hurt you. Tianqing glanced at Luo Li. He didn't refute her. He said in a low voice, it will take at most 10 days to get here from the demon clan's lair. We don't have much time. After 10 days, the great demon saint will find us. Of course, we have to find the god bead. No matter how dangerous it is, we can't give up. However, we only want to find the god bead. We can't fight with the great demon saint for now. Yin Yao and Luo Li nodded. They didn't refute. For the next 8 days, Tianqing and the other 2 divine dragons carried out a thorough search in the desert. During this period, they encountered many troubles. Every day, there would be groups of ghosts coming to besiege them, trying to devour their souls and flesh. These ghosts were quite strong and difficult to deal with. It took a lot of effort for them to deal with them. Other than the ghosts, they also encountered terrifying quicksand, fire, cracks in the void, and other dangers. There were a few times when the 2 divine dragons were injured to protect them. The 3 of them managed to turn danger into safety, successfully overcoming the crisis. After 8 days of searching, Tianqing and the rest finally understood why the Ghost Desert was called a forbidden area. Even an ordinary tribulation stage expert would find it difficult to survive in this place. They could lose their lives at any time. On the 9th day, Tianqing and the other 2 had already searched 70% of the Ghost Desert. It was a pity that they didn't find any information or clues about the god bead, even though they had experienced many dangers. The 3 of them were tired. They were covered in dust and their eyes were dim. The flame of hope in their hearts was also gradually weakening. However, God's arrangement was always so wonderful. The more you look forward to it, the harder it is to fulfill your wish. Chapter 2031. It was noon, the time when the power of the stars was the strongest. The thick clouds and black aura in the sky above the Ghost Desert had faded a lot. Faint golden light spilled down from the gaps in the clouds. The Ghost Desert, which had always been dark and gloomy, was dispelled a little bit and brightened up. At this moment, while Tianqing, Luo Li were flying over a low-lying sandy area, Yin Yao suddenly frowned. Stop! She, who had always been calm and quiet, suddenly ordered the glazed fiery dragon to stop. The glazed fiery dragon immediately stopped. Tianqing and Luo Li also turned to look at Yin Yao with expectant eyes. Yao Yao, what's wrong? Yao Yao, why did you suddenly stop? Did you sense something? Yin Yao didn't say anything. She stood still on the back of the glazed fiery dragon and closed her eyes. She lowered her head slightly and held it with both hands. She seemed to be listening to something or thinking deeply. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing and Luo Li guessed that she must have sensed something. Sure enough, after around 20 breaths of time, Yun Yao's body suddenly trembled, and she opened her eyes. She revealed a face full of surprise and joy, her clear eyes bursting with a thick light of joy. I knew it. It's the God Orb. It must be the aura of the God Orb. She looked towards the northwest with sparkling eyes and said excitedly, Tianqing Luo Li, I just sensed the aura of the God Orb. It's in that direction. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li looked at each other, and were also pleasantly surprised. They were happy for Yin Yao. Yao Yao, are you serious? Yao Yao, you really sense the aura of the God Orb? Yin Yao nodded with certainty. Although it's just a slight aura, I'm not wrong. It's the aura of the God Orb. To her, the God Orb was the most intimate, familiar, and important thing in her soul. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li both believed that she wouldn't make a mistake. Thus, the three of them did not hesitate any longer. They hurriedly rode the divine dragon and flew towards the northwest. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li rode on their respective divine dragons to observe the surrounding terrain and use their divine senses to explore their surroundings. Yin Yao sat on the fire dragon's back and concentrated on sensing the divine pearl. Over there. Go a little further west. It shouldn't be too far away. Just another 50 li to the north. It's getting closer and closer. I can feel the aura of the divine orb becoming clearer and clearer. It's just north of us, 200 miles away, right there. Yin Yao sensed the aura of the divine orb and pointed the way for Ji Tianqing and Luo Li. Half an hour later, the three of them had flown over 1,000 miles and arrived at their destination. Ji Tianqing and Luo Li frowned when they heard what Yin Yao said about the place where the sacred pearl was hidden. All around them was a boundless black desert. In front of them, there was a whirlpool with a radius of 100 miles. It was a bottomless pit formed by black sand. The bottom of the pit was dark and empty, and it kept swallowing the sand. The terrain here was the lowest. The black sand from all directions gathered here, and was swallowed by the black hole in the whirlpool. No one knew where the black hole was connected to. No matter how much sand was poured in, it couldn't be filled up. It's so strange. If there are whirlpools in the sea, there must be an eye of the sea. How can there be a whirlpool in the desert? Luo Li stood in the sky and looked down at the whirlpool. She frowned in confusion. Ji Tianqing stared at the whirlpool and observed it for a while. He then said seriously, under some circumstances, sand is no different from seawater. They will both flow with the waves. If I'm not wrong, the black hole under the black sand whirlpool is connected to an alternate dimension. That's why it can't be filled up. Luo Li and Yin Yao were enlightened when they heard that. They nodded to show that they understood. I see. I wonder where this whirlpool that appeared in the center of the ghost desert is connected to an alternate dimension. Where does it lead to? The two girls stared at the black hole at the bottom of the whirlpool. Their eyes were shining as if they wanted to see through it. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a smile as he teased. Perhaps it's an ancient ruin, or perhaps it's a demon's den. Of course, it could also be an abandoned space. After he said that, he turned to Yin Yao and asked, Yao Yao, you're very close to the God Pearl now. You should be able to determine the approximate location of the God Pearl, right? Yin Yao nodded and pointed to the bottom of the whirlpool. She said with certainty, the aura of the God Pearl is coming from the bottom of the whirlpool. It seems like the God Pearl is in the alternate dimension at the bottom of the whirlpool. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. No wonder you kept saying that the aura of the God Pearl is very weak. Previously, I thought that the God Pearl had been lost for too long, and its power had weakened. Now that I think about it, the God Pearl is actually hidden in the alternate dimension. No wonder its aura is so weak. Since the God Pearl was hidden under the whirlpool, the three of them naturally had to enter the whirlpool to search for it. However, the black sand whirlpool was filled with black gas. It was mysterious and eerie. One look and they could tell that it was an extremely dangerous place. Of course, the three of them would not enter rashly. They still had to make some preparations. Ji Tianqing said with a solemn face, The Ghost Desert is a forbidden area. The black sand whirlpool in the center of the desert is even more dangerous. I dare to guess that there are definitely many experts who have discovered this black sand whirlpool. However, ordinary people do not dare to enter it. Most of the people who enter rashly are either dead or have fallen. We must be careful. Yin Yao nodded in agreement. Luo Li said expressionlessly, "We know what you said very well. There's no need to say anything else." Ji Tianxing did not say anything else, and went straight to the point. "I'll go down first and scout ahead. Luo Li will follow behind me. If there's an unexpected situation, she can take care of me and protect Yao Yao. Yao Yao will follow behind Luo Li. Lu Li and Black Dragon will bring up the rear. Pay attention to protecting Yao Yao." After assigning the tasks, he held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and stepped into the black sand whirlpool first. Swoosh. As soon as he entered the black sand whirlpool, a terrifying suction force attacked and enveloped Ji Tianxing's body. The suction force was extraordinary. Even a tribulation stage expert would find it difficult to resist. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing was already prepared. After his body shook a few times, he quickly stabilized. "Everyone be careful," he shouted in a low voice and cast a spell to form a magic shield. Then he flew toward the bottom of the whirlpool. Luo Li, Yin Yao, and the 2 divine dragons followed behind him and landed at a moderate speed. The deeper they went into the whirlpool, the stronger the suction force they had to endure. At the same time, the endless black fog and demonic aura, as well as the fierce wind that was as sharp as swords, were constantly corroding and killing them. Ji Tianxing tried his best to resist, while Luo Li dealt with it calmly. She still had the strength to protect Yin Yao. The 2 divine dragons could only resist with all their might and proceed cautiously. Finally, after an hour, everyone reached the bottom of the black sand whirlpool. Chapter 2032. Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks and stared at the black hole under his feet. He frowned in confusion. He could clearly sense that the black hole was not ordinary. It actually released a powerful void power. Moreover, this black hole looked circular. In fact, the edges of the black hole were not neat. There were many cracks and corners. It was like a mirror that had a big hole punched out. Strange, this black hole is actually a void crack? And it doesn't look like it was formed naturally. When I was under the Broken Soul Cliff, I also found a void crack that led to the void outside the world. That void crack was caused by the collision of the star core of the illusory spirit world. I wonder, how did this void crack appear? Just as Ji Tianxing was pondering, Luo Li behind him urged impatiently, "Ji Tianxing, what are you doing here? Go in quickly. This is the most dangerous place. If we stay any longer, we will consume a lot of our magic power. It is also very dangerous." Ji Tianxing nodded and reminded them, "This black hole is a void crack. After passing through the black hole, it is very likely to be the void. Everyone be careful." Hearing his words, Luo Li could not help but frown. She quickly cast a spell to form a shield to protect Yin Yao. Of course, she could distinguish the void power and knew that Ji Tianxing was not lying. She also knew that only martial sages could walk in the void. It was very dangerous for tribulation stage powerhouses to stay in the void. They could lose their lives at any time. Swoosh. Ji Tianxing stepped into the black hole first. His figure flashed and was swallowed by the darkness. Luo Li followed without hesitation and disappeared into the black hole. Then, Yin Yao and the 2 divine dragons entered one after another. Silence was restored in the vortex as if no one had been there. Swoosh. In the next moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly felt his body become light and entered a cold and dark space. He used his magic power to protect his body. He quickly opened his eyes and released his divine sense to explore his surroundings. After seeing the surroundings clearly, he immediately frowned and revealed a playful expression. Sure enough, I have really entered the void. Just as he expected, he was now standing in the vast and icy cold void. In all directions, within a radius of several thousand miles, there was nothing at all. Behind him was the vast void. In the distance, he could vaguely see dense silver light dots that were shining brightly. Those were the billions of stars in the universe. And in front of him, about 100,000 miles away, was an extremely huge and colorful star. The surface of the star was shrouded in a layer of faint golden light. It was tranquil and peaceful. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this huge star. This was the five elements world that he lived in. In the next moment, Luo Li Yunyao and the two divine dragons appeared beside him. Luo Li, on the other hand, was still fine. She didn't need to use her magic power to protect her body, and she was able to stay in the void without any injuries. Yunyao was protected by a shield, so she was safe. However, even though the glazed fire dragon and the black dragon had the bodies of divine dragons, they could not withstand the power of the void. The two divine dragons were trembling, and they felt as though their bodies were being pricked by needles. In the gaps between the dragon scales, there were small wounds and some fine drops of blood seeped out. When Ji Tianqing saw this, he knew that the two of them could not stay in the void. Otherwise they would be injured. Black Dragon, return to the sword and rest. As he spoke, he waved his hand and a ray of golden light shot out, sending the black dragon into the sword world. Yunyao also hurriedly took out a fiery red jade box and stored the glazed fire dragon inside. In the void, only Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Luo Li were left. Yunyao looked around and her face and eyes were filled with shock and surprise. This is unbelievable. So this is the void. This is the first time I have seen it with my own eyes. I didn't expect the five elements world that we are in to be like this. Luo Li nodded in agreement and said emotionally, the cultivation of martial arts is the process of strengthening oneself and understanding the universe. Only when one reaches the martial sage realm can one walk in the void and see the void. Even though I have entered the void many times, I only stayed for a short while. The beautiful and eternal void is something that I can never get enough of. Ji Tianqing did not interrupt. He looked at the five elements world and observed the direction that they had come from. It was a pity that they were too far away and he did not see anything strange. He waited for an hour and waited for Yunyao and Luo Li to finish admiring the void. Then he flew back with the two ladies. Luo Li was puzzled and asked, Ji Tianqing, it is rare for you to enter the void. You should take a few more looks at such a magnificent void. It will be beneficial for your cultivation in the future. Are you in such a hurry to go back? Don't you want to look at it for a while longer? Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly. It is just the void. It will not change. What is there to look at? Don't forget that we are here to look for the divine pearl. We have to finish our business as soon as possible. Luo Li frowned again and asked, look for the divine pearl? Then we have to find the alternate space connected to the vortex. What is the use of going back in such a hurry? Ji Tianqing looked at the five elements world in front of him and pointed at the mysterious golden light. He said, if I am not wrong, the answer is there. Luo Li glanced at him and looked at the five elements world suspiciously. Naturally, she did not believe him. However, Ji Tianqing insisted on checking it out. She could only be patient. Soon 12 hours had passed. The three of them flew for 120,000 miles in the void before they reached the edge of the five elements world and arrived at the golden light seal. Only when he got closer could he see that there was a metal block that was over 10 miles long embedded in the hazy golden barrier. The bronze-colored metal block was elongated, like a primitive mineral vein. Its shape was not regular. Its surface was distorted and full of holes. At first glance, the huge metal block looked like a sharp knife that pierced through the golden light barrier and stabbed into the five elements world. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing revealed a faint smile and nodded to himself. Indeed, as I expected, another foreign object hit the five elements world and pierced a crack in the void. However, this huge metal block, why does it look so familiar? He vaguely felt that the curved and rough metal block did not look like a mine or a star core. It looked like a divine ship driven by the upper realm gods. However, this divine ship had been destroyed and was completely deformed. That was why he could not recognize it. Luo Li and Yunyao also stared at the metal block and looked excited and expectant. Tianqing, you have good eyesight. You can see this strange metal block from hundreds of thousands of miles away? Yao Yao, don't flatter Ji Tianqing. Luo Li rolled her eyes at Yunyao and pretended to be serious. You want to see a metal block that's 10 miles long from hundreds of thousands of miles away? That's like letting you see a mosquito that's thousands of miles away. Yin Yao was not angry when she heard this. Instead, she was even more excited and expectant. So Tianqing didn't see this metal block, but he already knew that there was a problem here. Chapter 2033. Yin Yao's words proved Ji Tianqing's conjecture. The three of them hurriedly flew through the void and landed on the huge piece of metal. During the flight, Luo Li frowned and sized up Ji Tianqing. She looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Ji Tianqing did not look sideways. He only stared at the piece of metal and did not care about Luo Li's reaction. Just as they were about to land on the bronze metal, Luo Li could not help but ask, Ji Tianqing, how do you know there's a problem here? You can't see this piece of metal from hundreds of thousands of miles away. Ji Tianqing glanced at her and said calmly, I don't rely on my eyes. I rely on this. As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at his head. Luo Li's expression froze. She frowned and muttered unhappily in her heart. Despicable bastard, how dare he mock me for being brainless? This bastard, it's as if he didn't say anything. He must have come to the void and experienced something like this before to be able to think of this. But that's not right. With his strength, it's impossible for him to break through the spatial barrier and come to the void. The more Luo Li thought about it, the more confused she became. She only felt that Ji Tianqing was too mysterious, making it harder for her to see through him. After a while, the three of them landed on the huge piece of bronze metal. Everyone spread out and observed this piece of metal from a close distance, looking for the whereabouts of the divine pearl. Only then did Ji Tianqing realize that his guess was completely correct. This piece of bronze metal was the battleship that the deity had piloted. However, the deity battleship was severely damaged. It was already broken and distorted to the extreme, and only a wreckage was left. He could roughly see that the deity battleship was originally exquisite and magnificent, divine and majestic. This deity battleship was at least a deity battleship. In its complete state, it was at least 30 miles long and could accommodate 100,000 soldiers. However, the destructive battle had caused the deity battleship to be distorted and deformed, turning it into scrap metal. Even the surface of the metal was covered with burn marks from the divine fire. The deity battleship fell from the void like a meteor streaking across the void. More than half of it was burned. Therefore, when the deity battleship finally reached this place, only a blurry wreckage was left. Even so, the divine warship was made of superior divine metal, and was extremely sturdy. After crashing into the five elements world, the wreckage of the divine warship broke through the golden light seal, and pierced through the spatial barrier. It was precisely because of this that a spatial tear had appeared in the ghost desert, and was difficult to heal. After understanding the origin of the space crack, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, before I ascended in my previous life, the world of five elements was peaceful and peaceful. There weren't so many strange things. But now strange things kept happening. First, the phantom spirit world was destroyed, and the star core crashed into the five elements world, forming a space crack. Now another divine battleship had crashed, and its wreckage had also pierced into the five elements world, creating a spatial crack. A great world was destroyed, and then a divine ship crashed. Perhaps it was a coincidence that something strange happened. But for strange things to happen one after another, that was too abnormal. So many things had happened in 1,000 years? It seems like disputes have arisen in the universe, and the myriad worlds are not at peace. Ji Tianqing sighed, and recalled that he had seen the phantom spirit star core, and the divine battleship with his own eyes. On the surface of the world of five elements, there might still be many wreckages. It was just that he had not seen them yet. Although the world of five elements is big, it's an ordinary star in the universe. The probability of various star cores and divine battleship wreckages falling into the void and crashing into the world of five elements is very small. From this, it can be seen that these strange things and battles happen not far from the world of five elements. Moreover, the scale of the battle must not be small. Ordinary powerhouses would only feel surprised and incredulous when they saw the appearance of the divine battleship wreckage. But Ji Tianqing was different. He was once a divine king whose might shook the heavens. He traversed the galaxy and was experienced and knowledgeable. From these two small matters he could deduce many clues. In the depths of his soul, a trace of uneasiness also faintly emerged. He had an ominous premonition. Perhaps, not long after, the world of 5 elements would also face a disaster. Just as he was thinking to himself, Yin Yao's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Tianqing, come over and see. Ji Tianqing came back to his senses and looked up at Yin Yao. He saw that she was standing at the bow of the divine battleship wreckage 5 miles away. The bow of the divine battleship had long been twisted, but he could still see that the bow of the divine battleship was in the shape of a shuttle. It was like a sharp thorn that pierced deeply into the world of 5 elements. The endless black sand in the ghost desert poured down from the spatial rift and poured into the bow of the divine battleship. But the strange thing was that the sharp and narrow bow of the divine battleship clearly could not hold much, but it seemed to never be full. No matter how much black sand poured in, it was never full or overflowed. Yin Yao and Luoli were standing at the bow of the divine battleship, staring at the endless black sand pouring down like a flood and pouring into the bow of the divine battleship. The two of them looked carefully and clicked their tongues in wonder. They became more and more curious about the divine battleship wreckage. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and came beside the two of them. He looked at the black sand and the bow of the divine battleship. After observing for a while, he asked, Yao Yao, are you sure that the divine pearl is here? Yin Yao quickly nodded and said with certainty, it's so close. My senses will not be wrong. It's under our feet, about 1,000 feet deep. 1,000 feet deep? Ji Tianqing frowned and pointed at the divine battleship wreckage under his feet. He said with a troubled expression, it's such a solid lump of metal. How can we dig 1,000 feet deep? Luoli glanced at him and said expressionlessly, what's so difficult about that? It's just the wreckage of a magic treasure. Once I cut it open, I can smoothly take out the divine pearl. As she spoke, a cold light shone in her palms, and 2 ice crystal short swords appeared. This pair of ice crystal short swords was called Stillwater. It was a top-grade sacred artifact that martial god Luo Shui had personally refined and given to Luoli. It was no exaggeration to say that this pair of short swords was already a top-grade magic treasure weapon on the continent, second only to a divine artifact. Luoli held the Stillwater swords with both hands and channeled her energy with a solemn expression. She released a vast amount of energy and slowly stabbed at the divine battleship wreckage under her feet. 2 palm-wide, 10-meter-long icy sword lights emitted an incomparably sharp aura as they pierced towards the bronze metal. Yin Yao stared at her movements, her eyes full of anticipation. Ji Tianqing watched coldly from the side, waiting to see Luoli suffer. In the next moment, 2 crisp sounds of metal clashing rang out, shaking the entire divine battleship wreckage. Clang, clang. The icy sword lights that Luoli had unleashed shattered inch by inch, turning into fragments that scattered in the void. On the other hand, the bronze metal was not damaged at all, not even leaving a mark. Such a scene caused Yin Yao to frown and reveal a look of confusion. Luoli was also stunned, and her expression was a little awkward. However, she was very unwilling to give up. She waved her swords with all her might and stabbed at the divine battleship wreckage under her feet. Chapter 2034. The Stillwater swords shone with a cold light as they pierced toward the bronze metal with an unstoppable force. However, there were 2 crisp clangs that shook the void. The entire wreckage of the divine warship shook uncontrollably. The 2 sword lights collapsed with a loud bang, shattering into pieces of cold light that scattered in the void. Luoli was angry and wanted to cut open the divine warship wreckage, so she used a secret technique and unleashed 120% of her power. However, the divine warship wreckage was still unscathed and did not even leave a mark. Instead, the horrifying recoil passed through the Stillwater swords and into her body, causing her to retreat a dozen steps before she could regain her footing. Her face was as white as paper, and her chest rose and fell rapidly. It took her a lot of effort to suppress the chaotic magic power. However, a thick sense of shame and embarrassment filled her heart, causing her expression to be unsightly and unable to get off the stage. After a moment of silence, she suppressed the embarrassment in her heart. When she looked up, she saw Ji Tianqing looking at her with a faint smile. Luo Li's heart trembled as she glared at him and shouted coldly, "What are you looking at? I didn't expect this artifact wreckage to be so tough, so I slipped up. This artifact wreckage must be a divine artifact for it to be so indestructible. My still water swords are only divine artifacts, so of course they can't cut it open." Divine artifact? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Yin Yao with a smile. "Yao Yao, didn't Divine Master Luo Shui give you a reverse water sword? Lend it to Luo Li and let her try again." Yin Yao naturally agreed and quickly took out the reverse water sword and handed it to Luo Li. Luo Li took the reverse water sword and glared at Ji Tianqing. Then, she held the sword with both hands and used her energy to slash at the divine warship wreckage. With her previous experience, she was extra cautious this time. She had to unleash 100% of her power and leave a backup plan to avoid being injured by the recoil. Whoosh! The reverse water sword shone with an icy blue sword light and released the power of a divine sword as it slashed at the ancient bronze metal. Clang! A sharp, ear-piercing, and long metallic sound exploded in the void. The wreckage of the divine warship trembled violently for a few dozen times before it finally calmed down. Even though Luo Li was prepared for it, she was still forced back 3 steps by that terrifying power. However, the ancient bronze metal was still in perfect condition, without even a crack. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that there was a shallow white mark on the surface of the metal. Such an outcome caused Luo Li to be dumbfounded, and her entire being was stunned. How is this possible? Even the divine sword that the divine master had personally refined was unable to unravel the remains of this magic treasure? It was too unbelievable. Could it be that the quality of this artifact's remains surpasses that of a divine artifact? In Luo Li's heart, the strongest person on the Xinwu continent was the Luo Shui martial god. The most powerful magical treasures and weapons were naturally divine artifacts refined by divine masters. However, the scene before her eyes was too great a blow and shock to her. It overturned her understanding. Even the broken remains of a magic treasure were so tough that even the divine sword could not harm it. If this magic treasure was complete, how powerful would it be? When she thought of this, Luo Li suddenly raised her head and looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. She shouted, "Ji Tianqing, you already knew that there was something wrong with this artifact's remains, didn't you?" Ji Tianqing did not deny it and nodded. Luo Li became even angrier and said with a sullen expression, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Why did you have to watch me make a fool of myself?" Ji Tianqing looked at her innocently and spread out his hands. "But you didn't ask me. You..." Luo Li was so angry that her eyes widened. She wished she could beat him up. When Yin Yao saw that the two of them were about to quarrel again, she hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Luo Li, don't be angry with Tianqing. Let's get down to business first. This artifact's remains came from beyond the heavens, so it must be extraordinary. It's not strange for its quality to surpass that of a divine artifact. We have to think of a way now. How can we take the god bead out of the artifact's remains?" Luo Li's face showed that she was in a difficult position. She shook her head and said, "Yao Yao, you also saw that neither my still water sacred sword nor your reverse water divine sword could cut open the artifact's remains." Halfway through her words, she glanced at Ji Tianqing and said unhappily, "Anyway, I don't have a way. Your husband is so smart and has extraordinary means. He definitely won't let you down." Although she said this, she seemed to be very confident in Ji Tianqing. However, her eyes and tone carried a bit of ridicule. It was obvious that she wanted to see Ji Tianqing make a fool of himself. "If I, Luo Li, can't do it, then Ji Tianqing, you can do it if you have the ability. When you can't do it and make a fool of yourself in front of everyone, see how I'll retaliate and laugh at you." Luo Li thought to herself. She was actually a bit proud and expectant. Yin Yao's expression was still calm. However, the light of hope in her bright eyes gradually dimmed. She turned around and looked at Ji Tianxing. She asked in a gentle voice, Tianxing, you seem to know a lot about the artifact's remains. Do you have a way? She was obviously unwilling to give up and still had a trace of hope. After all, the god bead was too important to her. Ji Tianxing obviously understood her feelings. He stretched out his hands to support her shoulders and comforted her with a gentle smile. Yao Yao, don't worry. Not to mention the god bead hidden in the remains of the divine battleship. Even if you want the stars in the sky, I'll pluck them for you. Hearing this, Yin Yao's dim eyes immediately brightened up and surged with a strong sense of hope. Tianxing, I believe in you. I've long known that there's nothing in this world that can stop you. Standing to the side, Luoli couldn't help curling her lips as she looked at the couple's loving and sweet posture. She muttered, some people only know how to use flowery words to coax women, but they don't seem to have any real ability. You're bragging, but when the time comes and you can't do it, don't find excuses. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao heard her clearly. However, they just smiled at each other and ignored her. Yin Yao and Luoli were good friends. She knew that Luoli was holding back her anger, which was why she was so eccentric. Moreover, Yin Yao was a generous person, so she didn't argue with Luoli. Ji Tianxing ignored her. It wasn't that he was magnanimous, but that he didn't want to refute her. After a while, Ji Tianxing let go of Yin Yao and said seriously, all right, Yao Yao, time is running out. Let's not waste any more time. I'll take out the god bead for you now, but I need your help. Yin Yao didn't doubt him at all. She quickly nodded and said, okay. After that, Ji Tianxing pulled her to the edge of the ship's bow and explained patiently, as you can see, this magical treasure has been destroyed and turned into a solid iron lump. I don't know why the god bead was hidden in the remains. However, I'm sure that the endless black sand in the ghost desert must have been swallowed by the god bead after it was poured into the remains of the magical treasure. We can't break open the remains of the magical treasure by force. I can only use the metal dividing technique to open a passage for the god bead. Chapter 2035. The Art of Dividing Metal and Transforming God. Why have I never heard of such a technique? Yin Yao and Luoli both looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion. Ji Tianxing did not explain. He nodded slightly and said, there's no time to lose. Yao Yao, let's begin. After saying that, he sat cross-legged on the bronze metal, closed his eyes, and began to cast the technique. His face was solemn. He made strange gestures with both hands and used all his strength to cast the secret technique. He released the bright light of the stars and poured it into the bow of the ship. The dazzling light of the stars contained a mysterious power. After entering the bronze metal, it trembled at a high frequency. The light of the stars seemed to have turned into thousands of silver lines. It broke down the incomparably tough divine metal and opened up a passage as thick as a bowl. Under Ji Tianxing's control, the silver light of the stars continued to extend downward. The passage as thick as a bowl also gradually extended toward the depths of the bow of the ship, approaching the divine pearl bit by bit. In the void, one could not feel the passage of time. It was unknown how much time had passed. Perhaps it was a day, perhaps it was 2 days. Ji Tianxing continued to cast the technique without stopping. His mental energy was greatly depleted. His face was pale, and beads of sweat seeped out of his body. His spirit was somewhat dispirited, and he was extremely tired. After all, he only had the strength of the tribulation realm. But he had to use the power of the stars to forcibly cast the divine technique. This was only an ordinary divine technique, and did not have much lethality. But he had already created a miracle. No matter how talented or monstrous he was, he could not hold on for a long time. Fortunately, the passage as thick as the mouth of a bull had already extended nearly 300 meters. It was very close to the divine pearl. This was already his limit. If he wanted to dig any deeper, he would not be able to do it at all. Yin Yao and Luoli saw the scene clearly. Of course, they were shocked and full of horror. Both of them found it hard to believe that Ji Tianxing had opened up a passage in the mysterious metal that even the reverse water divine sword could not break. What kind of amazing technique was this? Perhaps only a martial god could do this. Yin Yao was naturally overjoyed and proud of Ji Tianxing. On the other hand, Luo Li's expression was extremely complicated. She was both shocked and ashamed in her heart. But more than that, they were curious about Ji Tianxing. She really couldn't understand what kind of background Ji Tianxing had. What kind of identity and methods did he have to create miracles time and time again? At the same time, Ji Tianxing sent a voice transmission to Yin Yao, who was next to him. Yao Yao, quickly communicate with the divine pearl, and move it into the tunnel. Yin Yao had been waiting for a long time, and was fully prepared. Hearing Ji Tianxing's voice transmission, she quickly closed her eyes and released her spiritual consciousness into the passage. Her soul consciousness followed the 100-zhang deep tunnel, and entered the depths of the ship without any hindrance. When his divine sense reached the bottom of the tunnel, it was only 3 meters away from the divine pearl. However, it was this thick piece of divine metal that stood in the middle that made her feel pressured and difficult. The material of the divine metal was special. Not only was it abnormally strong, it could also block magic power and isolate divine sense. Fortunately, her divine sense and the divine pearl could be said to be very close. She could clearly feel that every trace of the divine pearl's aura was as if it was alive and breathing. She was anxious and worried, but she forced herself to calm down. She focused her will to control her divine sense and merge it with the divine pearl's aura. A quarter of an hour, half an hour. Soon an hour had passed. Yin Yao's divine sense finally communicated with the divine pearl successfully. They breathed together and shared a destiny. She was pleasantly surprised and excited. She quickly used her divine sense to guide the divine pearl to move forward slowly. It was a dark golden divine pearl. It was only the size of an egg, and shone with a dazzling golden light. Its material was special. It could merge with the divine metal without any hindrance. It moved through the divine metal like a small fish swimming in the water. Yin Yao's divine sense was the thread that guided the small fish. The dark golden divine pearl moved bit by bit and got closer and closer to the tunnel. Ji Tianxing waited patiently. He gritted his teeth and held on tenaciously. Finally, Yin Yao controlled the divine pearl to pass through the thick divine metal and enter the tunnel. Without the obstruction of the divine metal, she immediately felt the pressure decrease greatly. Her connection with the divine pearl also became closer. Under the control of her mind, the divine pearl blossomed with a dazzling golden light and flew up along the bowl-sized passage. At the same time, Ji Tianxing also gradually retracted the starlight. The 1,000 feet deep tunnel also began to close quickly from the bottom. Swoosh! After 100 breaths, the divine pearl passed through the 1,000 feet deep tunnel and flew out of the divine metal. Yin Yao waved her sleeves and grabbed the divine pearl with her slender hand. She held it in her palm. Immediately after, Ji Tianxing also stopped casting and withdrew his magic power. The 1,000 feet deep tunnel disappeared and returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. His mind relaxed, and he let out a sigh of relief. He hurriedly took out a pill and consumed it. He circulated his energy and refined the pill to replenish his magic power and mental energy. Luo Li took 2 steps forward and came to Yin Yao's side. She stared at the divine pearl in her palm and revealed a look of surprise. "This is great. Yao Yao, you finally got this divine pearl." Yin Yao held the divine pearl in her palm and was also filled with joy and excitement. She nodded and said sincerely, "Yes. Fortunately, Tianxing was here. He thought of this method and helped me get the divine pearl. Otherwise, even if the divine pearl was right in front of me, I would be helpless." Yin Yao spoke from the bottom of her heart and did not think too much about it. However, Luo Li's expression was rather awkward when she heard it. Yes. Your Ji Tianxing is the most capable and powerful." Yin Yao turned her head to look at Luo Li and revealed a helpless bitter smile. She sent a sound transmission to Luo Li and asked, "Luo Li, you've always had a cold personality and you rarely get angry with others. Why are you at odds with Tianxing? You are the Divine Master's divine official. You are a magnanimous person. Don't get angry with Tianxing, okay?" Luo Li curled her lips and said unhappily, "It's not that I want to get angry with him. but he is really hateful. I get angry just by looking at him. Yunyao was even more helpless. She smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that the two of you are born to be incompatible." Then she stopped talking about this topic. After carefully putting away the divine pearl, she looked at the tip of the ship's bow. She saw endless black sand pouring down from the black hole and pouring onto the ship's bow. Previously, the divine pearl was hidden in the wreckage of the divine ship. No matter how much black sand poured down, it would disappear without a trace. However, now that the black sand poured into the bow, it quickly overflowed and scattered into the void. Seeing this, Yunyao's eyes were filled with surprise. She said in a solemn tone, "Tianqing was right. The black sand was indeed swallowed by the divine pearl. This fourth divine pearl can not only merge with metal, but it can also swallow sand and convert it into divine power." Chapter 2036. This dark gold god pearl was the fourth god pearl that Yunyao had obtained. The first three were blue sea, star, and longevity. This one was called Earth Spirit. Without a doubt, after she refined the Earth Spirit God Pearl, she would be able to control the power of the earth. However, this place was in the void, which was not suitable for cultivation. She could only keep the Earth Spirit God Pearl and refine it after she returned to the Luotian mountain. After about 2 days, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation. His magic power and mental energy had recovered, and his strength had reached its peak. Seeing him get up, Luoli said expressionlessly, "The void is dangerous. Since we have obtained the God Pearl, and your magic power has recovered, we should leave." Ji Tianqing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile, and said in a playful tone, "What? Divine Official Luo predicted that I would not be able to do it, but I was lucky enough to do it. Divine Official Luo, don't you have anything to say to me?" Luoli frowned and stared at him unhappily. "What do you want me to say?" Ji Tianqing pretended to think about it seriously, and said in a serious tone, "I have created an unimaginable miracle. You must be very shocked in your heart, and also admire me. However, you have a cold and arrogant personality, and you are not willing to admit defeat easily. It is impossible for you to show your admiration, so you can only hide it in your heart. I can understand your feelings and difficulties, and I will not force you to show your feelings. As long as you say, 'Young Master Ji, I am sorry,' I will forgive you for your previous rudeness. How about it? Am I being very lenient with you?" Luoli was dumbfounded, and stared at him in disbelief. Her face was covered with frost, and her anger was getting stronger. She never thought that Ji Tianqing would dare to say such words. After being stunned for a moment, she came back to her senses and angrily scolded, "Ji Tianqing, I have never seen such a shameless person like you. Who is shocked? Who admires you? Who admires you? You narcissistic, arrogant bastard. Even if I admire a pig or a donkey, I will never admire you. You want me to apologize to you? Dream on." Luoli was so angry that she almost went mad. Her status was so noble that for hundreds of years, no one had ever dared to act rashly in front of her. However, Ji Tianqing was completely unrestrained, which really opened her eyes. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. In his fury, his words became much more vicious, and he did not choose his words carefully. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He looked at her with a smile and said with a face full of surprise, "No? Miss Luoli, a dignified divine official, actually admired pigs and donkeys? TSK. Divine Official Luo, your taste is really unique." Ji Tianqing. Luoli furrowed her brows in anger as she glared at Ji Tianqing. Pointing her finger at him, she shouted, You're shameless." No matter how angry and furious she was, even if she was trembling with anger, she was powerless to refute. After all, she did have the intention of laughing at Ji Tianqing. However, she did not expect that Ji Tianqing would create a miracle and really take out the divine pearl. Now that she was being ridiculed by Ji Tianqing, she could only endure it. Seeing that Luoli was angry, Yunyao could only persuade Ji Tianqing. "Tianqing, stop talking and let Luoli win." Ji Tianqing smiled at her and nodded. Yunyao walked to Luoli's side and pulled her arm. She comforted. Luoli, I believe that Tianqing didn't do it on purpose. Both of you should take a step back and stop being so angry, okay? Luoli suppressed her anger with great difficulty and glared at Ji Tianqing. She said in a low voice, I don't want to see him. Yin Yao smiled bitterly and could only persuade. Okay, we'll do as you say. Our mission has been completed, and we will leave soon. After we leave the northern underworld mountain, I'll let him go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains first. We'll go back to the Luotian mountain. Luoli shook her head without hesitation and said, I don't want to see him for even a second. Let's go now. After we return to the Ghost Desert, we'll go our separate ways. He'll go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains alone, and I'll escort you back to the Luotian mountain. Yin Yao naturally disagreed. She frowned and said, the northern underworld mountain is very dangerous. The great demon saint is leading a large group of experts to hunt him down. How can we let Tianqing go alone? It's too dangerous. Luoli also knew that this was a little inappropriate and hesitated. However, she was still angry. How could she give in? Isn't he very capable and has created miracles time and time again? It's just the northern underworld mountain and the great demon saint. What's there to be afraid of? Yin Yao could only sigh helplessly. Ji Tianqing glanced at Luoli and thought to himself, women really can't be offended. Once they're angry, they're unreasonable. Seeing that Yin Yao was still comforting Luoli, he was too lazy to interrupt. He turned around and looked at the wreckage of the divine battleship. Although this divine battleship has crashed into wreckage, it still has 5 kilometers of divine gold left. This is the best material for forging and upgrading divine weapons. It can only be found in the realm of the gods. I have to think of a way to get this wreckage of the divine battleship. In the future, if the Sword of Burial of Heaven wants to be upgraded to a divine weapon, it will definitely be useful. With this thought in mind, he released his divine sense to cover the entire wreckage and carefully observed it. The wreckage of the divine battleship was cold and dead. It was silently inserted into the 5 elements world. Other than Ji Tianqing and the other two, there was no other living thing in the wreckage of the divine battleship. There wasn't even a wisp of remnant soul. Moreover, all traces of the divine battleship had disappeared. Now the wreckage of the divine battleship was really a messy pile of divine gold. This pile of divine gold is 5 kilometers long and weighs more than 100 million pounds. If I use my divine sense, I should be able to move it. Ji Tianqing made up his mind and cast a few golden palms to hug the wreckage of the divine battleship. He gritted his teeth and exerted all his strength, trying to pull the wreckage of the divine battleship out. However, the wreckage of the divine battleship was inserted into the 5 elements world. It was firmly stuck in the spatial barrier and could not move at all. Ji Tianqing was unwilling to give up. He repeatedly tried more than 10 times, but he could not move the wreckage of the divine battleship. He could not pull it out at all. Damn it! I can't pull it out, nor can I refine it. Could it be that I can only look on helplessly and do nothing about it? Ji Tianqing frowned and pondered about a solution. However, at this moment, a blood-red dot of light lit up in the void hundreds of kilometers away. That blood-red dot of light was like a shooting star that cut through the void. It was as fast as the aurora. Yin Yao and Luoli both sensed that something was wrong. They frowned and looked at that blood-red dot of light with vigilance. What's that? It seems like there's a strong fighter approaching and coming straight for us. I can sense a strong demonic aura. Oh no, it's a strong fighter from the demon clan. Both of them sensed that the situation was not good. Their expressions became sinister, and they became cautious and vigilant. Luoli also suppressed her anger. She stared at that dot of light, and a trace of fighting spirit surged in her eyes. In the blink of an eye, that blood-red dot of light came close and landed on the wreckage of the divine battleship. Swoosh! A blood-red light flashed, and 2 tall and burly figures appeared on the bronze wreckage of the divine battleship. They were 2 strong fighters from the demon clan with a strong demonic aura. Chapter 2037. Ji Tianqing, I've finally met you. The leader of the demon race was wearing a long robe that was as red as fire. There were pictures of white bones and demons embroidered on it. There was also a pair of mysterious ghost claws embroidered on his collar and chest. This person was more than 10 feet tall. He was burly and muscular. His hands that were exposed outside of his robe were a pair of black and cold sharp claws. His 5 sharp claws were long and sharp. There were also fine dragon scales on the surface of his skin that were emitting a black cold light. On his round head, there was a pair of big eyes. His pupils were blue in color and were flickering with blue flames. He had an arrogant posture and a majestic aura. He was emitting a domineering aura that looked down on the world and an unparalleled killing intent. He glared at Ji Tianxing with his big eyes. His cold and majestic voice contained unconcealable joy and excitement. Ji Tianxing, Yin Yao, and Luo Li immediately concluded, "This demon dragon must be the most powerful person in the North Underworld Mountain, and the leader of the 4 great demon saints." In comparison, the white-haired elder behind the great demon saint, who was wearing a purple robe, had 4 wings and 6 arms. He was much weaker in terms of aura. However, when Ji Tianxing saw the white-haired elder's face clearly, he frowned and his pupils contracted. Patriarch Xuepao. Obviously, the skinny and ferocious-looking white-haired elder was the 4th great demon saint, Patriarch Xuepao. Back in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Ji Tianxing and the Huanglong Daoist had joined forces to severely injure Patriarch Xuepao on the night that the Shihe sect was attacked. Patriarch Xuepao's physical body was destroyed and only his severely injured divine soul was left. He had fled in panic. Ji Tianxing was sure that if Patriarch Xuepao wanted to go into seclusion to heal his injuries, he would need at least a few decades or even a few centuries to recover. However, he knew the Ancestor Fiend Celestial's nature, and knew that the Ancestor Fiend Celestial would not wait for such a long time. He would definitely use some kind of secret technique to help Patriarch Xuepao recover his strength as soon as possible. But now, Patriarch Xuepao appeared in the void. His body was intact and his strength had not decreased. The difference was that Patriarch Xuepao's body had changed. His body was as red as fire. He had 4 wings and 6 arms and his purple hair had turned white. Upon seeing this, Ji Tianxing was certain that he had guessed correctly. The Ancestor Fiend Celestial must have used a secret technique to restore Patriarch Xuepao in the shortest period of time. However, there must have been severe consequences and severe consequences. Sure enough, Ancestor Xuepao stared at Ji Tianxing with a malicious gaze and grinned coldly. "Ji Tianxing, we met again." Ha 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 ha. You definitely didn't expect this, did you? This old man has actually recovered his strength in such a short period of time. Patriarch Xuepao's voice was low and hoarse. His tone was cold and filled with hatred. Not long ago, this old man received the news that you had barged into the North Underworld Mountain, and the great devil saint wanted to kill you personally. Such a heaven-sent opportunity, how could this old man miss it? Let's see how. Of you. Today, even if a god descends, he will not be able to save you. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said in a mocking tone, "You recovered your strength so quickly. The ancestral devil god must have helped you. If I'm not wrong, the Ancestor Fiend Celestial must have used a secret technique to refine you into a magic treasure of the Devil Dao? Ha ha. To be refined into a magic treasure, you must have suffered inhumane pain and torture, right?" Patriarch Xuepao was exposed and poked at his sore spot. He recalled the pain and torture he had endured when the Ancestor Fiend Celestial threw him into the abyss of the Blood Sea and refined him into a magic treasure. For half a year, his soul had been tortured hundreds of thousands of times. He was constantly crushed, distorted, and then restored to his original form. That was the most painful experience in his life. It was also a memory that he did not want to talk about. It was too painful. It was too terrifying. Now that Ji Tianxing was mocking him, Patriarch Xuepao was enraged. He roared hysterically. "Ji Tianxing, you despicable beast reptile. The pain and torture that I had to endure was all because of you. Originally, I could have gone into seclusion to recuperate for 100 years. After recovering my strength, I would have sought revenge on you. However, I could not wait that long. I would not give you the chance to grow. I gave up the possibility of increasing my realm. I could not break through in my lifetime, just to kill you as soon as possible. Today, if I don't tear you into pieces and burn you into ashes, how can I get rid of the hatred in my heart? I will let you have a taste of the pain of having your body and soul crushed 1,000,000 times. Patriarch Shuepao was furious. It went to his head and made him crazy. After roaring, he was about to charge towards Ji Tianxing and tear Ji Tianxing into pieces. However, the great demon sage, who was standing in front of him, stretched out his hand and stopped him. The great demon sage looked coldly at Yin Yao and Luo Li. He sneered proudly and said, I came to the ghost desert to kill Ji Tianxing. I did not expect that the heavens would bless me and give me such a big gift. One is the #1 god's disciple of the Luo Shui kingdom, the future goddess. The other is the personal mate of the Luo Shui martial god, the most trusted divine official. After I kill Ji Tianxing, I will take you back to the demon palace and make you my concubines. By then, the reaction of the Luo Shui martial god and the people of the god's kingdom will be very interesting, right? After saying that, the great demon sage sneered. His tone was very evil. Patriarch Shuepao was also very proud. He sneered contemptuously and said, Great demon sage, these two lowly human slaves are so ugly. For them to be able to become your concubines and receive your favor, that is the fortune of their 8 lifetimes. Ha ha ha. The great demon sage laughed wildly and nodded. That's right. That's right. I am also making such a sacrifice for the great cause of my people. Luo Li and Yin Yao were so angry that their faces were pale. Their eyes were filled with shame and anger. Especially Luo Li, she was so angry that her body was trembling. Flames of killing intent surged out from behind her. Great demon sage, I have long heard of your fierce reputation, and that you are the #1 expert of the North Underworld Mountain. Luo Li is not talented, but as the great divine official under the divine master, I have long wanted to kill you and make a name for myself. Today, you have chased me into the void, so I have to thank you. Thank you for coming to die and giving me a chance to make a name for myself. Luo Li's tone was cold. Her eyes were cold, and her body was emitting an invisible heroic aura. Her chest was burning with a burning desire to fight. Her hands glowed, and 2 ice crystal daggers appeared in her hands. Great demon sage, I Luo Li will take your life. Luo Li shouted. Without hesitation, she held the still water dual swords and rushed toward the great demon sage. 2 crescent-shaped sword lights were released. Moonstar water. The 2 crescent-shaped sword lights were more than 10 miles long. They were as dazzling as the moon in the sky, illuminating hundreds of miles of the void. Chapter 2038. Luo Li had long wanted to compete with the great demon saint. Now that she had made her move, she naturally used all of her strength. The 2 crescent-shaped sword lights locked onto the great demon saint's consciousness and aura, and attacked him from both sides, leaving him with nowhere to hide. Even if he tried to teleport away, it would be useless. The sword lights would cut through the void and chase after the great demon saint. Of course, the great demon saint was arrogant, and did not bother to dodge. You want to take my life with such little tricks? You are too naive. The great demon saint sneered and immediately raised his hands, clenched his fists, and punched at the 2 sword lights. From his palms, a cold and deathly blue brilliance surged out, and condensed into 2 huge black dragon claws, slapping at the 2 sword lights. Kaboom! The deafening sound of the collision exploded in the void. A violent force burst out, shaking the surrounding hundreds of miles. Even the wreckage of the divine battleship trembled and shook. The sword lights and the black dragon claws collapsed at the same time, turning into streams of light and scattering in the void. Luo Li waved the short sword in her hands, and sword lights filled the sky once again, attacking the great demon saint. The great demon saint did not retreat, and with his black dragon claws he released a monstrous demonic shadow and fought with Luo Li. The 2 martial saints fought fiercely in the sky. Light and shadow flew in all directions, and layers of shock waves were generated. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ancestor Shuepao roared, and turned into a bloody light, pouncing toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, you bastard, give me your life. Ancestor Shuepao roared and flapped his 4 wings, waving his 6 arms, and releasing bloody light blades that covered the sky. Ji Tianqing was immediately enveloped by the bloody light blades, and had to bear the attack of thousands of bloody light blades. However, he was not afraid, and with a flash of brilliance in his right hand, the Sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. 7-star sword. With a thrust of the Sword of Burial of Heaven, 49 giant swords formed a mysterious formation and bloomed in all directions. With a series of muffled bangs, the cold light of the huge sword shattered the blood-red blades that filled the sky, tearing out a huge gap. More than half of the remaining bloody blades were destroyed by Yin Yao. The remaining hundreds of sharp blades pierced Ji Tianqing, but they did not have much power. They did not injure him at all. Seeing this, Patriarch Shuepao's pupils constricted, revealing an extremely shocked expression. Ji Tianqing, your physical body is actually comparable to a martial saint expert? How is this possible? He remembered clearly that Ji Tianqing had not broken through to the martial sage realm. How could he possess the physical body of a martial sage? While he was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing had already transformed into a streak of light and charged over with sword in hand. Heaven Cleaving Sword. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands and slashed out a 1,000-foot-long golden sword toward Patriarch Shuepao. The sword light was dazzling and extraordinarily powerful. Even the void was rippling. Patriarch Shuepao did not dare to be careless. He quickly suppressed his shock and focused on his opponent. With a swoosh, he folded his 4 wings and released a blood-red light that shot up to the sky to protect himself. Blood Sea, 10,000 slaves protect master. The surging blood-red light was like a 1,000-foot-wide shield that protected Patriarch Shuepao. The blood-red light surged like waves of blood. There were even tens of thousands of demonic shadows that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Boom! The huge golden sword struck the blood-red light, and a deafening explosion erupted. Although a crack was formed in the blood-red light, countless blood-red flames spurted out. However, the huge golden sword sank into the blood sea and was quickly corroded, completely disappearing. Patriarch Shuepao had successfully neutralized Ji Tianqing's attack and was not injured. Only then did he feel relieved. I thought you had broken through to the martial sage realm. I did not expect it to be like this. So what if your defense is comparable to a martial sage's? Your secret skill will not be able to do anything to me. Patriarch Shuepao laughed proudly and waved his 6 arms again. He released a blood-red light that covered the sky and poured it down on Ji Tianqing. Endless blood sea. The blood-red light that covered the sky was like a flood that sealed off the sky and poured down on Ji Tianqing's body. In an instant, the area within a 200-mile radius turned into a blood sea. The waves in the blood sea surged up to the sky. The demonic shadows overlapped and attacked Ji Tianqing crazily. The blood sea had the power to corrode one's physical body and spiritual soul. It formed hundreds of spells and continuously attacked Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was trapped in the blood sea and had to bear the full force of Patriarch Shuepao's attack. It would be difficult for him to escape in a short period of time. Moreover, he had to use his mana shield to resist the corrosion of the blood sea. The shield was constantly broken and repaired, draining his mana rapidly. If this dragged on for too long, his mana would be depleted. Then his combat ability would weaken rapidly, and he would be no match for Patriarch Shuepao. Fortunately, Yun Yao relied on the protection of the reverse water divine sword. Not only did she resist the corrosion of the blood sea, but she also rushed to Ji Tianqing's vicinity. Tianqing, don't panic. I'll help you. Yun Yao's expression was cold as she shouted in a low voice. She flew to Ji Tianqing's side and held the reverse water divine sword with both hands. She slashed down with all her might. Sword bestowed by God, repel water and repel demons. The icy blue reverse water divine sword released a terrifying divine power. It formed a 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword light and slashed at the raging blood sea. The sword light was like a bright moon that cut through the night sky and illuminated the world. It was like a thunderbolt that tore through the night and dispelled all darkness. Its power was like the wrath of a god. Its power was boundless. Boom! The sword light slashed at the blood sea, creating a loud sound that shook the universe. It spread thousands of miles in the void. The surging and evil sea of blood was actually split into two by the sword light, creating an abyss in the middle. The blood sea was broken. Endless blood light scattered in the void and quickly dissipated. The sword light moved forward with indomitable will. It slashed for hundreds of miles before stopping. The blood sea that Patriarch Shuepao had condensed with all his strength was split in half by Yin Yao's sword. It fell into the void in pieces. Swoosh! The blood sea was broken. Patriarch Shuepao also suffered a heavy blow and was sent flying in a sorry state. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was shocked and excited. This is incredible. Yao Yao, this divine sword is so powerful that you can send Patriarch Shuepao flying with just one slash? Yin Yao's face was pale. She held the reverse water divine sword with both hands and panted violently. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, she nodded and said while panting, "Yes, the sword that the divine master made himself and carries with him everywhere. Its power is naturally extraordinary, especially since I have mastered the art of controlling the divine sword these few years. That's why I can use 30% of the divine sword's power and use this ultimate technique. However, with my current strength, I can only use it 3 times at most before I'm exhausted." Only then did Ji Tianqing understand the reason, and his excited mood immediately calmed down. At the same time, Patriarch Shuepao flew back. He was only slightly injured. It did not affect his battle. His momentum was even more ferocious. Haha. UB*TCH. Do you think you can kill me with the reverse water divine sword? What a joke. I spent half a year in the abyss of the blood sea. It's already an extreme path demonic weapon. Chapter 2039. Extreme Path Demonic Weapon? Yin Yao frowned, and her serious expression became even more puzzled. Ji Tianqing explained, Extreme Path Demonic Weapon is one of the secret techniques of the ancient demons. It's extremely vicious and powerful. Using this secret technique can refine demons and demonic beasts into demonic dharma artifacts. They'll be as tough as puppets and won't feel pain, but their souls and consciousness will be preserved. They'll still have the ability to think. In the ancient War of the Gods, the demons refined the severely injured demons and demonic beasts into extreme path demonic weapons in order to preserve their combat power. That's an extremely powerful and terrifying team. Like the blood god, they're the most terrifying force of the demons. Yin Yao roughly understood what he meant. She became even more cautious when dealing with Patriarch Shuepao. Moonlight Cascade. She charged at Patriarch Shuepao again. She waved the reverse water divine sword and slashed out a 10-mile-wide white sword light. The sword light was as bright as the moon. It slashed at Patriarch Shuepao like a cascade that covered the sky. Patriarch Shuepao said arrogantly. But in reality, he didn't dare to underestimate the power of the reverse water divine sword. He could only fight back with all his might. Ji Tianqing took this opportunity to attack with his sword. He joined forces with Yin Yao. Sky-splitting sword. The sword light was as bright as the sun. It cut through the dark and cold void and slashed at Patriarch Shuepao. Bam bam bam. A series of muffled sounds resounded in the void. Patriarch Shuepao used his secret technique to release 4 blood dragons to block Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao's attacks. The two sides started fighting in the void. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. As the battle became more and more intense, the 3 of them left the remains of the divine warship and moved into the void. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao joined forces and fought with Patriarch Shuepao for thousands of rounds. But they still couldn't kill him. Patriarch Shuepao was severely injured. He looked terrible. 2 of his 4 blood wings had been chopped off. The remaining 2 were in tatters. 2 of the 6 arms had been shattered, and the remaining 4 were badly mutilated. In addition, his entire body was riddled with wounds, and there were barely any intact pieces of flesh. Dark purple demon blood seeped out of the numerous wounds on his body, turning him into a bloody man. If Patriarch Shuepao had not been refined into an extreme Dao demonic weapon, his body would have been destroyed long ago. However, things were different now. His physical body had been refined with a secret technique, and his defensive power had increased by several times. Even though he was severely injured, he could still retain 30 to 40% of his combat strength and tenaciously resist Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's siege. As for Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, their injuries were not light either. Their hair was disheveled, their white robes were stained with blood, their faces were ghastly pale, and their breathing was somewhat chaotic. After fighting for 2 hours, the two of them had used up 60 to 70% of their magic power. Their battle prowess had also weakened a lot. However, the two of them refused to give up before killing Patriarch Xuepao. 5-colored divine lightning. Meteor fall. The two of them gritted their teeth and continued to use their secret techniques to increase the pace of their attacks. Patriarch Xuepao's power was getting weaker and weaker, and his injuries were getting worse. He was forced to retreat, and it was difficult for him to withstand the attacks. Patriarch Xuepao was about to lose. He could hold on for another 15 minutes at most, and then he would be killed by the couple. However, at this critical moment, a dark purple flowing light came from not far away. Swoosh! Inside the dark purple flowing light was a demon more than 10 feet tall, wearing a red robe. It was the great demon saint. His clothes were ragged, his hair was messy, and his entire body was covered in blood. His entire left arm was dangling weakly. At first glance, the great demon saint looked like he was in a mess, as if he had been severely injured. However, that was not the case. He was only slightly injured, and his strength was still as powerful as ever. Black Dragon Fist. Like a ghost, he teleported behind Ji Tianqing, raised his right fist and punched towards him. The two of them were only 10,000 feet apart. When Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong, it was already too late, and there was no way for him to dodge. Bam! The giant black dragon fist landed on Ji Tianqing and sent him flying 10 miles away. While he was still in the air, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire back was covered in cracks, and pale golden blood was seeping out of them. Fortunately, his body had been tempered thousands of times, and his defense was extremely strong. That was why he was able to block the great demon saint's punch. Otherwise, the great demonic saint's punch would have turned him into dust on the spot. No. Yun Yao saw Ji Tianqing being attacked with her own eyes, and her face was filled with shock. She was extremely worried. Instinctively, she rushed over and tried to save Ji Tianqing. However, the great demon saint had already predicted her reaction. His right fist turned into a claw, and a black light shot out from it. Black Dragon Palm. The black dragon palm shadow that blotted out the sky carried a domineering might that could suppress everything as it struck Yun Yao. Although Yun Yao saw that things were not going well, she quickly waved her divine sword to block the attack. However, her cultivation level was too low. How could she block the great demon saint's attack? Kaboom! Bam! The sword chi in the sky was smashed into pieces, and Yun Yao was also hit by the black dragon palm. Blood spurted out of her 7 orifices. Maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe the great demon saint did it on purpose. After flying for 10 miles, she landed right next to Ji Tianqing. The great demon saint had used a powerful attack to severely injure the two of them. By the time she and Ji Tianqing wiped the blood off their faces and regained their composure, Patriarch Xuepao had charged over again. Ji Tianqing. It's time for you to die. Patriarch Xuepao was smug and he sneered. He held a white bone spear and thrust it at them at lightning speed. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao quickly dodged the attack and cast spells to block Patriarch Xuepao's attack. At the same time, their hearts sank, and they became more worried. Damn it! Isn't the great demon saint fighting with Luo Li? Why did he suddenly appear? This is not good. Could it be that Luo Li is no match for the great demon saint and has been killed? Ji Tianqing knew that Luo Li was no match for the great demon saint. However, he could not believe that the great demon saint could kill Luo Li. Just as he and Yun Yao were retreating, the great demon saint was closing in on them, trying to kill them on the spot. At the critical moment, 2 cold sword chi suddenly flashed and attacked the great demon saint and Patriarch Xuepao. Swoosh! Swoosh! Cold light flashed and sword chi swept out. It was Luo Li. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was covered in blood. Her clothes were soaked in blood, and she looked extremely miserable. Her whole body was covered with hideous wounds. There were hundreds of them, and they were so deep that her bones could be seen. It was a miracle that her body had not collapsed after being severely injured to this extent. She waved the Stillwater dual swords with all her strength and stabbed out 2 sword chi to save Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The great demon saint dodged one of the sword chi. The other sword chi stabbed Patriarch Xue Pao, and a bloody hole appeared in his chest. Demonic blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 2040. Although Luoli was severely injured, she was at the end of her rope. Although she was no match for the great demon saint, she was still able to defeat Patriarch Xue Pao. After defeating Patriarch Xue Pao, she dashed toward the great demon saint crazily and slashed out dozens of sword rays. Swoosh! Swoosh! 64 giant swords that were thousands of feet long formed an oval-shaped sword array and enveloped the great demon saint. The great demon saint wanted to kill Ji Tianxing, but he could only give up and focus on defending against Luo Li's attacks. While attacking the great demon saint, Luo Li shouted to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao through telepathy, "You too. What are you waiting for? Run away. I'll hold the great demon saint back. Run away. Quick." Her voice was hoarse and low, and her tone was filled with grief and anxiety. At this moment, she was no longer as noble, elegant, cold, and holy as before. It was as if she was a completely different person. In the face of death, she could no longer care about her manners and dignity. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were severely injured, and they were trying to suppress their injuries. Hearing Luo Li's shout, the two of them were stunned and realized the seriousness of the situation. *T. Luo Li can't defeat the great demon saint, and she's severely injured. Ji Tianxing frowned and looked worried. Yun Yao's expression turned even uglier. She was extremely worried. On the surface, it looks like she's attacking fiercely, but it's actually a last-ditch effort. She's trying to hold the great demon saint back, so that we can have more time to run away. Tianxing, we can't hesitate. We have to run away now. Of course, Ji Tianxing knew that they had already lost this battle. If they continued to fight, they would definitely lose their lives. However, he was unwilling to run away just like that. He turned his head and looked at the void not far away. Patriarch Xue Pao was covered in blood, and there was a huge hole in his chest that was still bleeding. He could not feel any pain, and he was trying to suppress his injuries. He quickly gathered a ball of bloody light and covered his body. "Yao Yao, give me some time," Ji Tianxing said in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, he forced his heavily injured body to rush toward Patriarch Xue Pao like a bolt of lightning. Shua! In the blink of an eye, he had crossed 30 miles and arrived in front of Patriarch Xue Pao. Patriarch Xue Pao immediately woke up and raised his head to look at Ji Tianxing. Fear flashed in his eyes as he shouted, "What do you want to do, Ji Tianxing? Luo Li has already been defeated, and you guys are about to die at the hands of the great demon saint. Do you still want to put up a desperate struggle?" Ji Tianxing didn't waste any time talking nonsense with him. He directly raised his right hand and fiercely slapped out, "God-slaying spear." Boundless golden divine flames gushed out of his palm and formed a divine spear, thrusting toward Patriarch Xue Pao. The divine spear was 30 meters long, and it was burning with fierce golden flames, releasing an extremely terrifying aura. Patriarch Xue Pao's spiritual soul had been locked down. Being in the empty void, there was no way for him to escape. Feeling the terrifying power of the god-slaying spear, he felt fear from the bottom of his soul. His eyes widened in shock. "No!" Patriarch Xue Pao roared in horror. He instinctively raised his arms and spread out 2 tattered wings to protect his vital parts. He still didn't want to give up, and he desperately teleported 10 miles away. However, the god-slaying spear was so fast that it instantly pierced through 10 miles of the void and hit him. Boom! A deafening sound burst out, shaking the void and spreading for thousands of miles. A dazzling golden flame bloomed in the void like a mushroom cloud. The void within 3,000 miles was lit up by the golden light. Patriarch Xue Pao's body was already covered with wounds, and was on the verge of being destroyed. After suffering such a heavy blow, His physical body collapsed on the spot. He was blasted into billions of pieces and scattered in the void. Even his weak spiritual soul was pierced through by the god-slaying spear and shattered into several pieces. The golden divine flames surged and burned the pieces of flesh and spiritual soul into ashes. It was all over. Even though Patriarch Xuepao had been refined into an extreme path demonic weapon, he couldn't escape the fate of death. In the end, he was still killed by Ji Tianxing. Not even his bones were left behind. Ji Tianxing looked at the golden flames in the sky expressionlessly. After confirming that Patriarch Xuepao was dead, he turned around and left. Yin Yao hurriedly rushed forward to meet him. Despite her heavy injuries, she dragged him towards the wreckage of the divine warship. Dozens of miles away, Luo Li was still crazily attacking the great demon saint. She didn't care about her life at all. She was fighting with her life on the line. Even though she wasn't as powerful as the great demon saint, she was still able to stall the great demon saint and prevent him from escaping. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao returned to the remains of the divine battleship and stood at the front of the ship. The two of them turned around and looked at Luo Li with complicated expressions. Yin Yao was worried. She sent a voice transmission to Luo Li anxiously. Luo Li, run. Don't fight. Luo Li ignored her and continued to attack the great demon saint. At the same time she replied, No, I have to stall the great demon saint. Only then will you have a chance to escape. If I also run away, the three of us will die here. Yin Yao understood the meaning behind her words. She became even more anxious and tried to persuade her. Luo Li, don't be stupid. If you don't run away, you will die. If the three of us work together. Before she could finish speaking, Luo Li interrupted her. She said in a low and hoarse voice, Before we came to the North Underworld Mountain, I said that it is my responsibility to help you find the divine orb. No matter what, I will protect you and let you return to the Luotian Mountain safely. I have made up my mind. You don't have to say anything more. Yin Yao saw that Luo Li was determined to die, but she was still so stubborn. Her heart ached, and her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. At this time, Luo Li turned around and glanced at Ji Tianxing. She said in a cold and indifferent voice, Ji Tianxing, Yao Yao is the best girl in the world. She is destined to become the god of Luo River in the future. No matter what, please cherish her and protect her. Don't let her be wronged. I know you hate me, but I am not targeting you on purpose. I am doing this for Yao Yao. Go take Yao Yao and leave. Send her back to the Luotian Mountain safely. From now on, you and I don't owe each other anything. Luo Li's voice was calm and cold, revealing her determination. After she finished speaking, she no longer cared about Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao. She rushed toward the great demon sage without any regard for her own safety. Her whole body was covered in blue flames. At this time, she held her head high and her chest out. She had regained her usual cold and arrogant attitude. Her expression was as calm as water. However, her flesh and blood and the soul in her mind were burning fiercely. The blue flames that soared into the sky lit up the void for thousands of miles. It was like a phoenix spreading its wings and soaring in the sky. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao's bodies shook. They immediately understood her intentions. Their pupils shrank, and they subconsciously cried out in grief. No. Luo Li, don't self-destruct. However, Luo Li could no longer hear them. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Soul to Luo River, no more reincarnation. Chapter 2041. Boom. A loud explosion shook the heavens, and endless blue flames lit up the sky. A mass of dazzling and magnificent ice blue flames blotted out the sky and blotted out the sky. It was like the brightest star in the sky and the most beautiful fireworks in a festival. However, it was formed by Luo Li's soul. No matter how dazzling it was sad and sorrowful, and it made one's heart clench. Even though Ji Tianxing had a strong will, seeing Luo Li explode and die with his own eyes still made him feel sad. Thinking back to the words he had said to anger Luo Li, he felt guilty. The resolute words that Luo Li had said before she blew herself up still lingered in his mind, not dissipating for a long time. Yin Yao's eyes stared at the blue flames in the sky, and her body started to tremble. Her face was as white as a sheet, and 2 drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. Deep sorrow filled her mind and caused her heart to ache. All sorts of memories surfaced in her mind. When she had just arrived at the Luotian mountain, she was in an unfamiliar environment, and she was sad and lonely. It was Luo Li who came to her side, accompanied her, and helped her. All kinds of scenes, including Luo Li's frown, smile, and words, were still vivid in her mind. But now they were separated forever, and they would never be able to see each other again. Swoosh! The flames from Luo Li's explosion spread in all directions. The icy blue shockwave had the power to destroy everything, and it swept across a radius of a few thousand miles. Seeing the shockwave, Ji Tianqing was shocked. He hurriedly pulled Yin Yao away from the wreckage of the divine battleship and flew toward the quicksand. The black sand poured down from the black hole like a flood and entered the wreckage of the divine battleship. If they wanted to escape back to the ghost desert, they could only go against the flow and pass through the black hole. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing hugged the heartbroken Yin Yao tightly, passed through the black sand, and entered the black hole. When the destructive icy blue shockwave engulfed the wreckage of the divine battleship, the 2 of them had already disappeared. In the next moment, the 2 of them passed through the black hole and returned to the ghost desert. Shwa! A ball of dazzling golden light wrapped tightly around Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao as it flew out of the black sand vortex. Yin Yao was already an arrow at the end of its flight, unable to protect herself. Passing through the spatial black hole, one would have to endure the attacks of the spatial crack and the power of the void. It was Ji Tianqing who used his dermic powers to form a shield to protect him and Yin Yao, allowing them to pass through the black hole smoothly. Even though he succeeded, his vitality was greatly damaged, and his injuries became even more severe. Fortunately, he and Yin Yao had finally escaped from the void and were out of danger. However, before he could see the scene around him clearly, he heard bursts of exclamations and shouts. Oh my God! He actually managed to escape back. It's Ji Tianqing. He is Ji Tianqing. What are you waiting for? Kill him. The great demon saint has ordered us to tear this man into pieces. We must not let him go. Shouts of shock and excitement sounded around the vortex one after another. Ji Tianqing immediately recognized that those were the voices of many powerful demon clan cultivators. He raised his head and looked around. Only then did he see the situation around him clearly. He saw dozens of powerful demon clan cultivators standing around the black sand vortex with a radius of hundreds of miles. There were more than a dozen tribulation stage cultivators wearing black armor and holding swords and dharma treasures. There were also more than a dozen ferocious and ever-changing blood gods illusions. In addition, there were more than 20 demonic beasts that were as large as mountains and had ferocious and violent auras. Whether it was the powerful demon clan cultivators, blood gods illusions, or demonic beasts, they all stared at him excitedly, their eyes full of bloodthirsty murderous intent. There was no need for anyone to give an order. All the powerful demon clan cultivators and blood gods illusions used powerful secret techniques to beseech him. Suddenly, overwhelming bloody light, demonic qi, and dharma spell shadows drowned Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao like a monstrous flood. Both of them were seriously injured. It was not easy for them to escape from the void, but they were besieged by so many powerful demon clan cultivators. They were in imminent danger, and their lives were at stake. However, Ji Tianqing had known that the great demon saint had brought a large number of powerful cultivators with him. So he was prepared. When the dharma spell shadows fell from the sky, he held the seriously injured Yin Yao in his left arm and waved his right hand to release a sky full of thunderbolts. 5-colored divine thunderbolts. The 5-colored thunderbolts with the power to annihilate everything penetrated the bloody light in the sky and scattered around the black sand vortex. Suddenly, several powerful demon clan cultivators were hit by the thunderbolts and turned into black ashes on the spot. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing took Yin Yao through the huge hole, rushed out of the black sand vortex, and escaped from the encirclement of the demon clan cultivators. Many powerful demon clan cultivators reacted immediately and chased after them. However, Ji Tianqing had already summoned the black dragon. Swoosh! The black dragon carried him and Yun Yao and flew across the sky at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the gray clouds. Dozens of powerful demon clan cultivators chased desperately for thousands of miles, but they completely lost track of the black dragon and could only return empty-handed. The power of Luo Li's self-destruction was, of course, extremely terrifying. The icy blue shockwave was enough to destroy thousands of miles of heaven and earth. Any living being below the Saint Realm would not be able to survive. However, no matter how powerful the shockwave was, it could not destroy the wreckage of the divine ship, nor could it damage the golden light seal of the five elements world. The shockwave hit the golden light seal, but it was blocked and quickly dissipated. After a long time, the icy blue flames that covered thousands of miles of the void gradually disappeared. The void returned to silence once more, leaving no trace behind as if nothing had happened. Luo Li had also completely disappeared, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Thousands of miles away from the wreckage of the divine ship, in the empty void, a figure floated quietly. It was the great demon saint, who was seriously injured and unconscious. The red robe and armor that he was wearing, as well as his long hair, had all disappeared. His body, which was covered with black dragon scales, was also covered with dense cracks, and thousands of drops of demon blood seeped out. At this moment he was like a porcelain bowl that was covered with cracks, and would shatter with a touch. However, his injuries were not limited to this. Not only was his physical body on the verge of collapse, but his soul was also seriously injured, and he was unconscious. He had lost consciousness, and was like a leaf, a piece of black paper, quietly floating in the void. After an unknown period of time, perhaps half a month, perhaps a month finally, the great demon saint's eyelids moved, and he gradually opened his eyes. Damn bitch. She did not hesitate to self-destruct to injure me, how hateful. His lips moved, and he muttered in a venomous tone. Then he slowly sat up, took out a pile of black, purple and red elixirs and consumed them. After a few days of cultivation, he had recovered some of his vitality, and he flew back leisurely. When he returned to the wreckage of the divine ship, he was stunned when he saw that it was not damaged at all, and there was not even a trace left behind. What kind of metal is this? It withstood the power of a martial saint's self-destruction, and it was not damaged at all. Chapter 2042. When he had first arrived in the void, the great devil saint's attention had been focused on Ji Tianqing. At that time, he had only glanced at the remains of the divine battleship and had not paid much attention to it. Now that the matter had passed, the remains of the divine battleship had endured a great battle and been swept away by the shockwaves from Luo Li's self-destruction, but there were no traces of it left behind. This had attracted the great devil saint's attention. He stood on the remains of the divine battleship and carefully observed it for a long time, even using his divine sense to scan it dozens of times. In the end, he could tell that it was the remains of a treasure. Furthermore, the shape and style of this treasure were not found in the Shenwu continent. He was certain that this was a high-grade treasure that had come from beyond the heavens. Even if it was just a treasure, the materials used to make it were extraordinary, far surpassing the various refining materials of the Shenwu continent. This is definitely a divine-grade refining material. It can definitely be used to refine a divine weapon. Such a rare treasure has actually been encountered by me. How can I miss it? The great devil saint stared at the remains of the divine battleship with a burning gaze, feeling rather excited. Although I was unable to kill that bastard Ji Tianqing, I was able to force Luo Li to self-destruct, and I was even able to pick up the remains of a divine weapon. This can be considered as making up for my regrets. With this thought in mind, the great devil saint's regret and frustration at not being able to kill Ji Tianqing was greatly diluted. He could not wait to use his secret technique, releasing four enormous black dragon claws that could cover the sky and drag the remains of the divine battleship away. In his mind, it was just the remains of a divine weapon that had lost all of its divine power, so it should be easy for him to capture it. However, he did not expect that no matter how much force he used, the remains of the divine battleship would not budge. Unwilling to give up, he used other secret techniques to try and move the remains of the divine battleship. However, the results were the same. The divine sword remains were firmly embedded in the five elements world, and could not be moved at all. I don't believe it. It's just a mystical remnant that has lost all of its divine power. How can it not be moved? The great devil saint frowned, and his face turned purple from anger. Over the next 2 days, he tried all sorts of methods to move the remains of the divine weapon. He did not even hesitate to use a saint artifact to try and pull it out. However, everything he did was in vain. The divine artifact remains were incomparably sturdy, as if they had become one with the five elements world. 2 days later, the great demon saint had no choice but to give up and leave. Damn it! I can only look at the remains of the divine artifact with my own eyes, but I can't take it for myself. How infuriating. No, wait until I return to the North Underworld Mountain. I'll think of another way. If I can't do anything about it, I'll report this matter to Lord Demon God. He'll definitely have a way. With that thought in mind, the great demonic saint also passed through the black sand and entered the spatial hole. Chua. In the next moment, the great demon saint escaped from the void and returned to the space above the black sand vortex. Around the whirlpool, there were still a few demon race experts guarding it. Seeing the great demonic saint appear, everyone immediately surrounded him and bowed respectfully. The great demon saint looked around, frowned and asked, "Where are the others? Where did they all go? That bastard Ji Tianxing, have you caught him yet?" The few demon clan experts trembled in fear, stammering and not daring to answer. "Are all of you deaf?" The great demon saint had a bad premonition, so he pointed at one of the demon race experts and shouted, "You tell me." The demon race expert who was pointed out could only answer truthfully. "Reporting to Lord Demon Saint, that bastard Ji Tianxing has escaped from our encirclement, and is nowhere to be seen. The others have spread out, and are searching for Ji Tianxing's whereabouts." The great demon saint frowned fiercely. His eyes flashed with killing intent, and said angrily, "It's just as I expected. He really escaped. Damn bastard. He actually managed to escape from our encirclement with such heavy injuries." After this incident, the great demon saint finally understood how difficult it was to deal with Ji Tianxing. He glared at the few demon race experts and scolded them harshly. "You bunch of trash, what use do I have for you? Send a message to the others. Tell them to get back here. I want to punish them severely." The few demon race experts were filled with fear, and their bodies were trembling in fear, but they quickly nodded and agreed. Unknowingly, a month had passed. In the evening, the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao back to Luotian Mountain. Ever since Ji Tianxing left, he had not returned for more than 2 years. However, the tall, majestic, and sacred Luotian Mountain did not change much, and still looked the same as before. The setting sun shone, and the afterglow was golden, creating a peaceful scene. The Luotian Mountain was surrounded by white clouds, and the golden light was faintly discernible, adding to the sacred aura. Ji Tianxing stood on the back of the dragon, looking down at the Luotian Mountain in front of him, and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Ever since he escaped from the black sand vortex, he rode the black dragon, and left the North Underworld Mountain without stopping, rushing back to the Luotian Kingdom. Yin Yao was seriously injured, and it almost affected Yaya and Chunchen in her womb. Ji Tianxing was worried about her and the 2 children's safety, so he let her enter the sword world, and she had been in seclusion to heal her injuries. He did not rush back to Tianzhu Mountain, and went straight back to Luotian Mountain for Yin Yao's safety. After all, Tianzhu Mountain was not far from North Underworld Mountain, and it was not safe. If the great demon saint wanted to kill him, he would definitely chase after him, and it would be very dangerous. Luotian Mountain was located in the hinterland of the Luotian Kingdom, and it was the safest place. Moreover, Yin Yao not only had to go into seclusion to heal her injuries, but she also had to refine the Earth Spirit Divine Pearl as soon as possible. Only by staying at Luotian Mountain would he be most at ease. Swoosh! The black dragon passed through layers of clouds and landed on the peak of Luotian Mountain. Ji Tianxing had just returned to the Cloudwater Palace, and the Golden Dragon and Black Eagle came up to him and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, young Master Ji." Ji Tianxing waved his hand, indicating that the two could dispense with the formalities, and quickly rushed back to Yun Yao's room. The Black Eagle hurriedly followed and asked with concern, "Young Master, why did you suddenly come back? Where is Master? Is she not with you?" Ji Tianxing calmly explained, "Don't worry, Yao Yao came back with me and she is fine." Black Eagle, quickly go and report to Granny Long that I have something to discuss with her. The Black Eagle naturally did not dare to delay, and hurriedly replied, "Yes," and turned to leave. Ji Tianxing walked around the room, and saw that Yun Yao's room was as clean as ever, and the windows were bright and clean. He could not help but reveal a gratified expression. At least, during the time when he was not at Luotian Mountain, no one dared to neglect Yun Yao, and they would serve her wholeheartedly. He opened the sword world and summoned Yun Yao. Swoosh! A white light flashed, and Yun Yao appeared in the room. She had already changed into a tidy moon-white dress, and her hair was meticulously combed, looking as ethereal as before. After a month of seclusion to recuperate, her injuries had already recovered by 80%, and there were no major problems. Her complexion had also returned to normal, and no one could tell that she was injured. However, her eyes were a little dim, and there was a hint of worry in her eyes, and her heart was heavy. Chapter 2043. Ji Tianxing could see that Yun Yao was in a heavy mood, so he tried to comfort her. "Yao Yao, the dead are gone. Don't wallow in sorrow and blame yourself anymore." Luo Li was the Divine Master's most trusted and valued divine official. She was also loyal to the Divine Master, and swore to serve him with her life. The Divine Master ordered her to accompany you to find the Divine Orb and protect you. She sacrificed herself to protect us. This was not only because of your sisterly love, but also because of her loyalty to the Divine Master. What we need to do is not wallow in sorrow and blame ourselves. We need to pull ourselves together and find a way to avenge her. Ji Tianxing was the person who understood Yun Yao the most. He could see that Yun Yao blamed herself for Luo Li's death. In fact, he also felt a little guilty, but he never showed it. However, he was calmer and would not act on impulse. He knew that Luo Li had died for her loyalty and she had no regrets. The most important thing for him and Yun Yao to do was to kill the great demon saint and avenge Luo Li. Yun Yao remained silent and only nodded. Ji Tianxing tried to persuade her again. "Yao Yao, I have already asked Black Eagle to inform Granny Long. She will be here soon. Let's first report what happened in detail to Granny Long, and let her send a message to the Divine Master. Let's see what the Divine Master decides." "Okay." Yun Yao nodded again and replied. Just as he said, Granny Long rushed over in a short while. As soon as she entered the room, she asked impatiently, "Yun Yao, Tianxing? You are both back?" Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao quickly bowed. Granny Long stood in front of the two of them, and looked at Ji Tianxing from head to toe. Then, she revealed a gratified smile. "Tianxing, I haven't seen you for more than 2 years. Your strength has become even more unfathomable. You have improved again." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and did not say much. Granny Long then looked at Yun Yao and said, "Yao Yao, you and Divine Official Luo went to North Underworld Mountain to search for the Divine Pearl. You must have gone through a lot of dangers. Now that you've returned safe and sound, I'm relieved. Oh right, did you find the Divine Orb? What about Divine Official Luo? Why don't I see her?" Hearing this, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's hearts became heavier and heavier. How astute was Granny Long! Seeing that the two of them were silent and had strange expressions, she suddenly had a bad premonition. "Tianxing, Yun Yao, say something. What about Divine Official Luo? Why didn't she come back? Could it be that something happened to her?" As she asked, the smile on Granny Long's face and the anticipation and gratification in her eyes quickly disappeared. Yun Yao could no longer hold back her sadness. She bowed to Granny Long and said in a sorrowful voice, "Granny, it's all Yun Yao's fault. It's all my fault." Granny Long's expression changed. Her eyes were filled with shock. She asked anxiously. Yin Yao, what happened? Divine Official Luo is one of the best martial saints. How could something happen to her? Yin Yao's eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She said in a sorrowful voice, we found the traces of the divine orb in North Underworld Mountains Ghost Desert. But we had fought with the demon race's experts and revealed our whereabouts. We were surrounded by the great demon saint. She told Granny Long everything that had happened. After Granny Long heard it, she was shocked and angry. Her eyes were filled with mist. She couldn't help but shed tears. How could this happen? Divine Official Luo was so young and talented. She was favored by the Divine Lord. How could she be forced to self-detonate? Goddamn demon race. Goddamned great demon saint. Granny Long's hatred for the demon race had reached its peak. She couldn't wait to kill the great demon saint to avenge Luo Li. However, Granny Long was a martial saint who had lived for 1,000 to 2,000 years. She had experienced all kinds of storms. Not long after, she calmed down. Her face was solemn and her eyes were cold. She said in a low voice, Luo Li's death and the death of hundreds of millions of Divine Nation citizens were caused by the demon race. Our Luo River Divine Nation and the North Underworld Mountain cannot live under the same sky. No matter what, we must expel the demon race and kill all of them to avenge Luo Li and the people of Divine Nation. After saying that, she turned to Yin Yao and said in a dignified voice, Yin Yao, I know that you and Divine Official Luo are good friends. She self-detonated and died. You must be sad. But since things have come to this, it's useless to be sad. The most important thing now is to recover from your injuries and refine the divine orb to increase your strength. Only when you are strong enough to kill the great demon saint and avenge Luo Li will she be able to rest in peace. You are the Divine Master's most valued divine lady and the future sovereign of Divine Nation. I believe that you will be able to suppress your pain, pull yourself together, and take revenge for Luo Li. Yin Yao nodded and said in a firm voice, Granny, don't worry. In this life, Yin Yao swears to kill the great demon saint. I will avenge Luo Li and appease her soul in heaven. Granny Long also nodded and said, all right, go to the secret room to heal your injuries and refine the divine orb as soon as possible. I still have something to say to Tianqing alone. Yin Yao looked at her and vaguely guessed her intention. However, Yin Yao didn't say anything. She just nodded and went to the secret room to cultivate. Only Granny Long and Ji Tianqing were left in the room. Ji Tianqing then said, Granny Long, don't worry. Luo Li died to protect me and Yin Yao. I will definitely kill the great demon saint and avenge her. Granny Long shook her head and said in a heavy voice, Tianqing, it's enough that you and Yin Yao have such intentions. Divine Official Luo won't blame you. However, the great demon saint is extremely strong and is the strongest expert of the demon clan. Even Divine Official Luo wasn't his opponent. You and Yin Yao sigh. Then she shook her head and sighed, comforting them. I just wanted to encourage Yin Yao. I didn't really ask her to avenge Luo Li. You too, just focus on cultivating and increasing your strength as soon as possible. As for killing the great demon saint and avenging Luo Li, you don't have to worry about it for now. The Divine Master will arrange it. Obviously, Granny Long didn't think that Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao had the ability to avenge Luo Li. They were too young and only had the strength of the crossing tribulation realm. However, the great demon saint was the strongest expert of the demon clan, the expert closest to the deity realm. How could it be easy for them to take revenge? It would take at least a few hundred years to achieve it, right? Ji Tianqing understood what Granny Long meant, but he couldn't refute it. It was useless to say anything now. It would be better to kill the great demon saint himself in the future. After a moment of silence, he asked, Granny, I'm afraid you didn't ask me to stay here alone to talk about this, right? Is there any change in the situation of the northern border? Granny Long looked at him deeply and nodded. That's right. I can't hide anything from you. The situation of the northern border has reached the point where it could collapse at any time. Chapter 2044. What? The Northern Territory has fallen? Ji Tianqing turned pale with fright. revealing a look of disbelief. He never thought that in just a year of not paying attention to the situation in the Northern Territory, the situation would deteriorate to such an extent. Granny Long nodded with a solemn face and sighed heavily. The Northern Territory's 4 great empires, a total of 27 regions, have all been captured by the demons. Over the past 2 years, the demons have invested 50 million soldiers, persistently attacking the Northern Territory. Even though we have mobilized the forces of the great empires, conscripting 80 million soldiers, we still couldn't stop the demons' advance. More than 20 million soldiers died on the battlefield, and more than 300 million civilians died tragically under the demon's butcher's knife. More than 600 million civilians were persecuted by the flames of war, displaced and homeless. Although the 27 regions that have fallen are not even 1/10 of Scandinavia's territory. But this is a fatal blow to Scandinavia's morale. Now the entire Scandinavia is in a state of panic, the morale of the army is unstable, and the people are in turmoil. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's mood became even heavier. His fists in his sleeves were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. Damn it! Although these things were just empty numbers from Granny Long's mouth, but he had fought with the demons for many years, of course, he could imagine what kind of tragic disaster it would be. It would definitely be a scene of blood flowing and bones piling up like a mountain. A scene as tragic as hell. He couldn't help but recall the scene of him fighting against the demon race's army in the Central Plains. In his mind, many tragic and bloody scenes appeared. Thick anger and killing intent made him want to rush to the battlefield immediately, personally participate in the battle, and kill the demon's army. Granny Long was silent for a while, and seeing his strange expression, she said in a heavy tone, "Tianqing, this old woman knows what you are thinking. To be honest, this old woman can feel your anger and pain, and can't help but want to rush to the battlefield and kill the demons. But this old woman has a heavy responsibility, and also has to protect Luotian Mountain for the Divine Master. If this old woman leaves, Luotian Mountain will be in chaos, and the people's hearts will be even more scattered." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and said solemnly, "Granny Long, you have to guard Luotian Mountain. Naturally, you can't rush to the battlefield and slay the fiend. But I'm different. I can personally go to the north to participate in the war, and contribute to the protection of the God Nation." Granny Long revealed a gratified expression and nodded slightly. "Tianqing, you mentioned several times before that you wanted to go to the north to participate in the war, but this old one refused. But it's different now. You've already grown into an overlord. Even the dispirited pillar of heaven's mountains could be revived and restored to its former glory. This old one believes that you are already capable of shouldering heavy responsibilities by yourself. Over the past 2 years, I, the elders and the generals of the various empires have tried all kinds of methods to deal with the demon race. Unfortunately, the demons were too powerful and treacherous. At this point, we are at our wits' end and can only use human lives to fill the gap, using the flesh and blood of our soldiers to build a defensive line to resist the advance of the demon race. If you can participate in the war with your strength, stratagems, and methods, even if you can't repel the demon race's army, you can at least delay their advance." Ji Tianqing was about to agree, but Granny Long waved her hand to stop him. She said solemnly, "Tianqing, it's reasonable to say that you and Yin Yao need to rest the most now. You have already left Luotian Mountain to take charge of Pillar of Heaven's mountains. This old one has no qualifications to ask you to fight for the Luotian God Nation. But this old one has no other choice. I can only shamelessly ask you. I hope that for the sake of our past friendship." As she spoke, Granny Long bent her waist and bowed deeply to him. Ji Tianqing's body shook, and he quickly reached out to help her up. "Granny, what are you doing? Please get up quickly. I, Ji Tianqing, am not an ungrateful person. I will never forget the kindness of Luotian Mountain and the God Lord. Even if you don't ask me, I will also go to the north to participate in the war and kill the demons. This is not only for the God Nation's citizens but also for me, for Yin Yao and Luo Li." Granny Long was deeply comforted. Her eyes were slightly red as she said solemnly, "Tianqing, this old one sincerely thanks you on behalf of the God Lord and the God Nation's citizens for your kindness." Ji Tianxing hurriedly waved his hand and said, Granny, you're exaggerating. This is my duty in the first place. Don't worry, I will rest today and prepare. We will set off early tomorrow morning. Without waiting for him to finish, Granny Long shook her head and said, No, you can't rush. This old one sees that your cultivation is full and your soul is surging. There seems to be signs of a breakthrough. You must go into seclusion in Luotian Mountain for a period of time. After you have broken through, you can go to the north. Moreover, this old one has to report the news to the God Lord and wait for his decision. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Granny is indeed wise. To tell you the truth, I have reached the peak of the 8th stage, and am about to welcome the 9th heavenly tribulation. Just yesterday, I had a premonition that the heavenly tribulation is about to descend. Granny Long was instantly filled with shock as her eyes widened in disbelief. What? You are about to break through to the 9th stage of the crossing tribulation realm? Heavens! It has only been 2.5 years, and you have consecutively passed through 6 heavenly tribulations? This is simply unprecedented, an unimaginable miracle. Granny Long had lived for 2,000 years, and could be said to be knowledgeable. She knew countless legends from the past to the present. But she had never heard of such an abnormal genius like Ji Tianxing. After a long time, her emotions calmed down and said with a gratified face, No wonder you can control the pillar of Heaven's mountain, and control the overall situation. Since this is the case, this old one is even more relieved. When you break through to the 9th stage of the crossing tribulation realm, and head to the north, you will definitely be able to give the devil race a head-on blow. All right, this old one will not delay your time. Quickly go and cultivate and prepare for the heavenly tribulation. After saying that, Granny Long bid farewell and left. Ji Tianxing also prepared for a while, and entered the secret chamber to cultivate. After leaving the Cloudwater Palace, Granny Long returned to the Cloud Dragon Palace. She entered the secret chamber, and walked to a simple and elegant table. On the table, there was an exquisite and gorgeous diamond-shaped gem. Granny Long cast a spell solemnly, and injected her magic power into the diamond-shaped gem. Suddenly, the diamond-shaped gem lit up with white light, and formed a wide light screen in midair. A woman in a blue dress with an elegant temperament and a noble appearance appeared on the white light screen. This woman seemed to be in her 20s. Her face was beautiful, her eyes were like stars, and her temperament was like a goddess from the 9 heavens. Without a doubt, she was the ruler of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, the Luoshui Martial God. Of course, this was not the true body of the Luoshui Martial God. It was just a projection of her avatar. Granny Long, what's the matter? The Luoshui Martial God looked at Granny Long calmly and asked. Chapter 2045. What? Even though Luoshui Martial God had an elegant temperament, and was as calm as autumn water, when she heard the news of Luo Li's death, her expression changed and she frowned. Luo Li, she passed away? Granny Long, what's going on? Luoshui Martial God's expression was solemn, and his eyes were filled with pain. Granny Long hurriedly recounted what had happened in detail. After Luoshui Martial God finished listening, his face was as cold as ice and his eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Even the lofty Luoshui Martial God was infuriated. After all, she was the one who raised Luo Li and taught her. Not only was Luo Li her most trusted God official, but she was also her most trusted right-hand woman. Luoshui Martial God treated her like her own daughter, and had high hopes for her. Granny Long saw Luoshui Martial God's ugly expression and comforted him. God Master, please restrain your grief and don't be too worried. God official Luo Li was loyal her entire life, and didn't hesitate to die in order to follow the God's orders. It's the blessing of the God Kingdom's people for God Master to have such a trusted general, and God Kingdom to have such a loyal minister. Luoshui Martial God was silent for a long time before he gradually suppressed his anger, and said in a cold voice, This God originally wanted Yun Yao and Luo Li and poured my efforts into them. This God only hoped that Luo Li could assist Yun Yao in ascending to the God throne, and take control of Luoshui God Kingdom. I didn't expect that Luo Li would die before this God's wish was fulfilled. Luoshui God Kingdom and North Underworld Mountain are irreconcilable. This god will not sit by and watch this blood feud. I will personally go and flatten North Underworld Mountain. I will avenge Luo Li and comfort her soul in heaven. Granny Long's expression changed and she quickly dissuaded him. God Master, you can't do that. North Underworld Mountain is dangerous, and is a nest that the demon race carefully built for 30,000 years. Almost no one can enter the hinterland. Moreover, you are in seclusion and comprehending a divine technique. You will be able to break through within 100 years, and become the leader of the three martial gods. You can't destroy 300 years of hard work just because of a moment of anger. Luo Shui martial god had been in seclusion for 300 years. His closed-door cultivation this time went very smoothly, and his strength was also constantly improving. Just as Granny Long had said, after 100 years, Luo Shui martial god would achieve another breakthrough. By then, her strength would surpass the two martial gods, Tianjue and Taihao, and she would become the leader of the martial gods. But now Luo Li's death caused her to be filled with grief and indignation. She actually wanted to come out of seclusion and go to the northern underworld mountain for revenge. Once he forcefully ended his cultivation, the previous 300 years of hard work would be completely destroyed. Granny Long tried to dissuade him. Luo Shui martial god shook his head and explained, Granny Long, don't worry. I'm at a critical moment in my cultivation. I won't come out of seclusion. Hearing her say that, Granny Long felt a little relieved. After thinking for a while, she was enlightened and said, I understand now. Divine Lord, you want to send a clone to the North Underworld Mountain to kill the great demon saint and avenge divine official Luo? Luo Shui martial god nodded slightly and said seriously, That's right. I haven't shown my face for 300 years. I'm afraid the world has already forgotten my heaven-defying methods. Now that the demon race is invading and the great demon saint killed Luo Li, if I don't take action, what prestige do I have left? I'll send a divine soul clone to kill my way into the North Underworld Mountain. Not only will I kill the great demon saint, I'll also destroy the North Underworld Palace. Luo Shui martial god's tone was cold, and his voice was sonorous and unquestionable. Granny Long immediately bowed and cupped her hands. Divine Lord is wise. I wish Divine Lord victory and destroy the North Underworld Palace in one go. Luo Shui martial god didn't say anything else and turned to leave. Her figure soon disappeared in the white light screen. A moment later, the white light screen also dissipated. Granny Long was stunned for a moment. A gratified smile appeared on her face as she muttered to herself. Luo Li, Divine Lord has personally avenged you. If you're in heaven, you should rest in peace. In the next few days, Luo Shui Mountain regained its peace. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were cultivating in seclusion in a secret room. Yun Yao was busy refining the Earth Spirit Divine Pearl, while Ji Tianxing was consolidating his martial Dao and preparing for the 9th heavenly tribulation. Granny Long was as busy as ever. She had to preside over the overall situation of Luo Shui Mountain and worry about the war in the north. The disciples of Luo Shui Mountain were also cultivating day and night to increase their strength. When the time was right, they would rush to the battlefield to kill the demon race and shed blood for the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom. At the same time, the North Underworld Mountain that had just calmed down was stirred up again. Previously, Ji Tianxing and the others barged into North Underworld Mountain and slaughtered the entire demon race tribe. They were even surrounded by the great demon saint. The news had already spread in North Underworld Mountain, causing billions of demons to discuss it. Now that it had been more than a month, it finally calmed down. But on this evening, an uninvited guest appeared in the sky above Saint Devil City. Whoosh! A crack suddenly appeared in the sky tens of thousands of feet above the ground. A dark golden divine light lit up like a setting sun. An icy blue figure flew out of the giant crack. This figure was a young woman with a graceful figure, elegant and holy, and a cold aura. She wore an icy blue dress, and her hair was tied up in a noble and dignified bun. She wore a simple but not simple jade crown and hairpin. If this was the human world, the people would definitely bow and worship her. They would think that a goddess of the 9 heavens had descended to the mortal world. After all, her appearance and aura were no different from that of a god. She was one of martial god Luoshui's divine soul avatars. The setting sun was as red as blood, illuminating heaven and earth. However, it couldn't pierce through the layers of dark clouds above Saint Devil City. Saint Devil City was the most sacred and prosperous city in North Underworld Mountain. This was the sacred land of North Underworld Mountain. North of the city was the divine mountain where North Underworld Palace was located. The city was situated on a plain surrounded by mountains. It had a radius of 200 miles, and there were more than 2 million demons living in it. Giant black stone walls that were hundreds of miles long formed a circle around the city, protecting it. The city was flourishing and prosperous, and there were a myriad of buildings and palaces within it. Towering towers stood like trees in a forest, and there were row upon row of residences that were innumerable. All the buildings were built with black, brown, and gray rocks. All the buildings retained their ancient style. One could vaguely see the shadows of the ancient demon race's buildings. Giant statues of demons and asuras stood at the top of many tall towers, buildings, and palaces. They looked solemn and mysterious. At this moment, Luo Shui was standing high in the sky, looking down at Saint Devil City. Saint Devil City was bustling with people. Lanterns were lit, and it was a lively scene. However, some experts noticed something strange. They saw the sky crack and the golden light burst out with their own eyes. Immediately, those experts shouted loudly and spread the news. Chapter 2046. The entire Saint Devil City was in an uproar. Tens of thousands of demons looked up at the sky, loudly discussing and shouting. Everyone look. There's someone in the sky. There was a golden light just now. The sky seems to have split open. I saw it too. There's indeed someone standing in the sky, and it seems to be a human woman. That's a human expert. A strong enemy has invaded. What are you all standing there for? Quickly report to the city guard. Haha. Who dares to trespass into our holy city? They must be tired of living. I bet that in less than 10 breaths of time, that human woman will be killed by the second demon lord and eaten as dinner. Of course. The second demon lord is in charge of the city guard and the city guard. He has the most violent temperament. Any foreign race that falls into his hands will become his meal. Look, the second demon lord has indeed made his move. Just as the demons were discussing, a bloody light shot into the sky from the plaza in the center of the city. The dark red light soared into the sky, heading straight for the Luo Shui clone. Within that bloody light was a monster the size of a mountain of flesh. It had a shockingly round body and 4 short, thick limbs. Probably because its body was too fat and huge. Its body was covered in dark red sarcomas. It looked extremely sinister and terrifying. It had a round head on top of its 10 feet tall body. It had a wide, bloody mouth, and a pair of small eyes stared at the Luo Shui clone, flashing with a savage and bloodthirsty light. Without a doubt, this disgusting and ugly monster was the second of the 36 demon lords, the infamous second demon lord. At the same time, it was the commander of the city guard and the city guard, in charge of the safety of the holy city. Behind it were 4 city guard captains, all of them second and third level tribulation transcendence experts. In just 2 breaths of time, the dark red light flew into the sky and arrived in front of the Luo Shui clone. The 2 sides were separated by 10,000 feet, facing each other in the sky. Ha 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 ha. This lord has been bored for a long time. I didn't expect that a human woman would take the initiative to deliver herself to me today. Such fresh and tender flesh, blood and soul incomparably pure. It's definitely a delicious meal that's hard to come by in 100 years. The second demon monarch stared greedily at the Luo Shui doppelganger and laughed in satisfaction. Black saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth. The 4 captains of the city guard army also had sinister smiles on their faces, their bodies surging with murderous intent. In Saint Devil City, countless devils looked up at the sky, staring at the second demon monarch and the Luo Shui clone, waiting for a good show. Everyone was certain that the human woman was dead meat. Thinking that the tender human girl was about to be torn into pieces and eaten by the second demon king, people couldn't help but feel their blood boiling. A brutal aura surged in their hearts. However, the scene in the next moment made everyone dumbfounded. The Luo Shui doppelganger looked at the second demon lord expressionlessly. Without saying a word, it raised its right palm and shot out a dazzling stream of icy blue light. Shwa! That icy blue flowing light was like a fire that covered the sky. It was also like a meteor that streaked across the sky and engulfed the second demon monarch and the 4 city guard captains. Although the second demon monarch was a powerhouse in the 8th stage of the crossing tribulation realm, the strength of the 4 city guard captains was not ordinary. But the 5 powerhouses were caught off guard and did not even have the chance to dodge. Boom! With a muffled sound, the bodies of the second demon monarch and the 4 city guard captains instantly collapsed, turning into fragments that fell from the sky. Even their souls were torn apart and destroyed on the spot. The Luo Shui doppelganger had actually killed 5 crossing tribulation realm powerhouses with a casual palm strike. The entire process was understated, without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. It was simply elegant and otherworldly, like the work of an immortal. In Saint Devil City, countless devils witnessed it with their own eyes. All of them were dumbfounded. Their bodies stiffened on the spot. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one could believe that the human woman had such terrifying power. However, this was only the beginning of the disaster. The icy blue flowing light's power did not decrease at all. It poured into Saint Devil City like a flood. Rumble! With an earth-shattering sound, countless houses and buildings were engulfed by the icy blue flowing light. In an area of 5 kilometers, tens of thousands of houses and palaces were immediately covered by an icy blue sea of fire. A huge pit appeared in the ground, and a wide ravine split open. Tens of thousands of houses and buildings were reduced to ashes in the sea of fire, reduced to ruins. Tens of thousands of devil martial artists and commoners were also burned to ashes by the icy blue sea of fire, no longer existing. Such a terrifying scene, with its world-destroying momentum, immediately awakened the entire Saint Devil City. All kinds of screams, shouts, angry curses, and roars converged into an earth-shattering sound wave that exploded in the sky above the city. Thousands of devil experts and armored city guards soared into the sky with murderous intent, wanting to besiege the Luo Shui doppelganger. However, before the thousands of experts could fly into the sky, the Luo Shui doppelganger waved her slender hand again, sprinkling down an icy blue flowing light. Water moon clear sky. The icy blue splendor that was dozens of kilometers long fell from the sky like a crescent moon. Instantly, the icy blue crescent moon released a torrential flood that poured into Saint Devil City. More than half of Saint Devil City was submerged in the icy blue flood. The icy blue divine water was bone-chilling and quickly turned into extreme ice. Hundreds of thousands of houses and buildings, and millions of devil martial artists and commoners were all sealed in the extreme ice. The sturdy stone houses and palaces were all frozen to dust, and the ground also cracked open. 90% of the devils below the tribulation transcending realm were immediately frozen to death. All of them turned into ice crystals. Only the tribulation transcending realm experts were able to resist the power of the extreme ice. After suffering heavy injuries, they bitterly held on. In an instant, half of the originally bustling Saint Devil City was turned into a ghost town. More than 1 million devil martial artists and commoners were killed by the Luo Shui doppelganger's divine technique. Their bodies and souls turned to dust. Many of the devils died in an instant, not feeling any pain at all. Sealed in ice crystals, they still retained their expressions and movements from the last moment of their lives. Many people looked up at the sky, their eyes and faces filled with fear. Such a horrifying scene scared all the devils out of their wits. The surviving experts of the demon clan immediately realized that the human woman in the blue dress must be a divine transcendence expert. At the very least, she was a peak martial saint. Only a peak martial saint could release such a terrifying power, destroying half of Saint Devil City in one move and slaughtering millions of devils. Saint Devil City was instantly thrown into chaos. In the other half of the city, the millions of devils were horrified, fleeing out of the city in panic. All kinds of cries, curses, and roars mixed together, resounding through the sky. Countless devils fled through the streets and alleys, speeding through the sky, fleeing to the north of the city. As long as they crossed a few mountains and fled to the north, they would be able to reach the foot of the divine mountain. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.